Chapter 121. Yuli stared at the black screen for a moment, then suddenly turned to look at Yun Xiaozhu and the others. Is this a Zerg trick? And why do I feel Xingyu Shuhai is about to suffer another setback? There should be another SSS-level Zerg lurking nearby, and his abilities may be related to space. Fei Yusen explained, looking at the screen with a raised eyebrow. Xian Yi frowned. Space-related abilities are not easy to deal with. He hadn't expected that when the two sides engaged in a battle, the Zerg were clearly more prepared. As the image on the screen faded, the communicators of Xuanya and the other two began to buzz rapidly. Yuli, assuming that their subordinates had also received news of the war and were seeking instructions, sent them to quickly resolve the situation. A day later, with the news from these three people, Yuli, who was well informed, quickly learned the outcome of the battle. 2 of Xingyu Shuhai's 4 SSS-level espers had perished, and 1 was seriously injured. Their legions also suffered heavy losses. This time, the Zerg could still be considered to have escaped unscathed. No, it couldn't be said to have escaped unscathed, but rather that they had occupied a dozen planets along the border, even advancing inward at an extremely rapid pace. The Cosmic Forest suffered heavy losses in this battle. At the joint meeting of the 7 great powers, the Grand Elder, acting as the Queen's administrator, requested support from the other superpowers, and once again requested the formation of a joint army to wipe out the Zerg in one fell swoop. This time, everyone agreed to the proposal. After all, they were well aware of the danger posed by the Zerg. Currently, they only had the Cosmic Forest to hold them back. If the Cosmic Forest could no longer hold them back, it would be a truly catastrophic situation. Seeing that all the proposals were passed, the Wood Tribe's Great Elder breathed a sigh of relief. He also shared an important piece of information. The Zerg are so eager to acquire the psychic cores of various races because psychic cores are a crucial prerequisite for the birth of their Zerg eggs, and the higher the psychic core, the more advantageous it is to them. Wait, what does this advantage mean? Someone asked with a rather grim expression. It means that if a Zerg egg absorbs an SSS-level psychic core, it will be born SS level, and even reach SSS level in no time. Furthermore, the Zerg's abilities will be even greater than the original owner. After presenting his explanation to the crowd, the Great Elder added, of course, SSS-level psychics are not easy to deal with. The Zerg are targeting the star race, because obtaining SS and S-level psychic cores is much easier. A hush fell over the virtual meeting room as these words were spoken. After all, the Zerg were now high-ranking officials from various countries, all possessing psychic abilities above SS level. The thought of becoming a Zerg target sent a chill down the spines of the important figures. But how did you get this news? Wasn't the war in the Starry Sea lost? The Great Elder remained calm upon hearing this question. Our Queen received the final message from a dying comrade from another star region. Another star region? Yes, but that star region has been completely devoured by the Zerg, the Great Elder replied. So, the Zerg's discovery of our star region is like discovering a new world. Someone couldn't help but sneer. TSK, we're not that easy to take down. After this secret meeting, the various superpowers began to take action. The 5th Legion, to which Yunshin University belonged, also quickly received the news. Yuli gathered with her friends, staring at the instructions on the screen. Gui Yunsheng read word by word. Joint Legion recruitment plan? Inu rested his chin on his hand, his gaze fixed on the last few paragraphs. Does this depend on personal preference? Coach Guan nodded and said, yes, it depends primarily on personal preference. Of course, the rewards are generous if you participate. I'm showing this to you mainly because you're already S rank, or even SS rank. He glanced at Yuli and Gu Huji with a sigh. The school has almost no potential for your advancement. Normally, you join the Legion, but this recruitment plan is a timely relief. I've taken a look, and if you join the Joint Legion, there are some very good opportunities that will help you improve your strength. Of course, there are still risks involved. It depends primarily on your personal preference. Yuli listened to Coach Guan's rambling and knew that he understood that their future advancement would require accumulating military merit in the Legion, but that this would take considerable time. Joining the Joint Legion would accelerate things much faster. After Coach Guan finished speaking and looked at them, Yuli's gaze fell on the light screen that appeared in the void. Main quest: join the United Legion. Quest description: congratulations to the host for successfully thwarting the Zerg's plot and winning the Star Tournament. Now, facing the onslaught of the Zerg, the host naturally chooses to face the challenge head-on. Of course, this shouldn't be a problem for you either. Quest reward: 1. Space Mage, brilliant. Yuli stared at the asterisk on the system panel, feeling somewhat bewildered. What was she taming? Why did it feel like her abilities had increased significantly after reclaiming the sealed power, and the system had become much more active? Hey, you still need to explore, You're really much more lively now. Yuli grumbled silently. Gu Huji didn't hesitate at this question and said directly, I'm in. As he finished speaking, the others followed suit, and those who finally agreed looked at the girl. Yuli nodded. I'm in too. Great. You're ambitious and courageous. Coach Guan was delighted, but also a little worried. After they signed up, he secretly gave them a lot of defensive items, showing off his maternal side. Over the next few days, Yuli also crafted a batch of top-grade items and potions, giving them to her friends. She also paid special attention to Gui Yunzheng, who wasn't very good at fighting. In the end, Gui Yunzheng's fingers were adorned with a variety of rings, and his wrists and neck were covered in all sorts of jewelry. Besides the gifts from Yuli, others had also generously donated these gifts. After all, he was the weakest among them. This made Gui Yunzheng feel a bit amused, yet also deeply touched. He promised to take these with him when he went to the battlefield. Of course, Yuli saw Gui Yunzheng's joyful smile, but she felt even more distressed when she returned home to face the gifts from Yun Xiaozhu and the others. She could almost understand Gui Yunzheng's feelings. Isn't this a bit too much? And all of them are hanging on my body, the girl protested weakly. Yun Xiaozhu and the other two looked at the boxes piled up on the table, almost like a mountain, and began to think. Xuanya was the first to retreat before the girl's watery eyes. The dragon tail behind him twitched uncomfortably, and he said, just take the necklace from before. Yuli's eyes lit up, and she quickly nodded in agreement, draping the scale, polished to the appearance of obsidian, around her slender neck. Xianyi watched her secure the necklace, the scale buried in her collar. His ears felt a little hot, and he silently averted his gaze. Fei Yusen, however, thought for a moment and gestured for the girl to hold out her hand. It's true that carrying so many things isn't convenient. Ollie, give me your hand. Let me try. Okay. Yuli placed her hand in the man's large, dry palm. Fei Yusen was delighted by the girl's trust. His beautiful gem-like emerald eyes curved. He grasped the girl's hand and turned it over, a shimmering emerald light glittering from his fingertips. Ollie, if you're scared, just close your eyes. It'll be fine soon. It won't hurt. Fei Yusen soothed softly, but he gripped the girl's hand firmly, restraining her movements. His fingertips touched the inside of Yuli's fair, delicate wrist, seemingly sketching something. It felt cool, but not as painful as she'd imagined. Yuli closed her eyes, feeling nothing, and opened them again to see a simple peacock totem appear on her wrist. Okay, I can rest assured with this. It works just like those rare items. It can protect you in times of danger, Fei Yusen said with a smile. Yuli watched him grin like a fox, a hint of doubt welling up in her heart. Really? Of course, Ollie, how could you not believe me? Fei Yusen acted pitifully. Unfortunately, before he could successfully act pitiful, Yun Xiaozhu interrupted him. Ollie, this feather is hidden in your hair, and it functions much like Fei Yusen's tattoo. He raised the golden-rimmed white feather in his hand, which emitted a soft glow, and gently brushed the hair by the girl's ear. The white feather merged into her hair and disappeared. Yuli subconsciously touched her smooth long hair, as if she had not noticed the white feather just now. Yun Xiaozhu saw her doubts and curled his lips to explain. Under normal circumstances, it will not appear. Is that so? So magical? Yuli muttered softly, but Mo Yin, who had been watching his clones being attentive, curled his lips in disdain, saying that it was impossible for Ollie to get into trouble around him, and these were just gifts to please the girl. However, seeing that Yuli was obviously in a good mood, Mo Yin put aside the idea of finding time to secretly erase these things. The joint army was quickly established, with one supreme commander from each of the 7 superpowers, and other recruited personnel were directly assigned corresponding positions according to their own ability levels. Yuli was a little shocked that she was given the position of K-87 Area Commander and Inspector right away. This? I don't know anything yet. Isn't it a little too easy for her to manage a district right away? Her Deputy General Mei Qingzi, a lady with a similar ability to Gui Yunzheng, laughed at her complaints and finally explained, I will be responsible for the general affairs of these areas. I used to do this kind of civilian work. Commander, you doesn't have to feel too much psychological pressure. Basically, SS-level psychics are likely to be given this position. As for the position of Inspector, it is probably to facilitate you or others to provide cross-regional support. Is that so? Yuli was relieved after hearing Mei Qingzi's explanation. It would be good to have someone to assist her, otherwise she would be a complete blank about these things. However, she looked at Mei Qingzi and asked in confusion, shouldn't our coalition army go to fight the Zerg? Why does this position feel like guarding this area? Chapter 122. Mei Qingzi's expression straightened in response to Yu Li's question. A day ago, the Zerg launched their full-scale attack on the Xingyu Forest. However, due to the previous defeat, the Xingyu Forest is no longer able to resist their attack. Therefore, we've made a temporary adjustment to your positions. Please do your utmost to protect the local residents and give them time to evacuate. Once these residents have evacuated, we will assemble your commanders and subordinates for the assault. Is that so? Yu Li pondered for a moment, then looked at the list of personnel assigned to her area. It contained some brief personal information and abilities, revealing that there were approximately 50 S-level espers, with the remainder being A-level or below. The total number of personnel reached 5,000. Mei Qingzi noticed Yu Li browsing the lists. She opened her own screen, displaying a map of the area, and said, Commander Yu, the area you're responsible for consists of 2 natural planets and 3 resource planets. Most of the personnel are concentrated on the natural planet, and the Zerg are targeting it. I suggest you send a small team out to intercept the Zerg and buy time for the residents. Of course, if we encounter SS-level Zerg or those with S-level abilities, we need your help. Yu Li nodded in agreement, not objecting, likely understanding that her role was to deal with SS-level Zerg and that she wouldn't be needed for other operations. But speaking of evacuation, she thought of her new costume, which had a spatial ability and might be useful. She waved, letting Mei Qingzi withdraw, and then began to change her attire. Yu Li raised her hand, and golden stars emerged from it, enveloping her in a circle. Her light brown hair gradually transformed into long, lavender curls that fell over her shoulders, revealing her graceful collarbone. A delicate pearl necklace adorned her chest. A white strapless dress outlined her graceful curves. The lower half of her translucent crystal bustle was inlaid with dazzling arrays of magic circles. From the bustle, shimmering crystal flowers slowly blossomed, emitting a captivating halo. A translucent lavender veil wrapped around the girl's shoulders, casting a hazy, almost ethereal, impression, adding a touch of mystery. A mysterious circle of magic circles enveloped her, emitting a soft, flowing light that evoked a sense of tranquility and mystery. A magic book engraved with countless array patterns floated in midair, its complex pattern swirling around the book. Yu Li waved her hand, and the magic book, as if guided by her, flew to her and began flipping through the pages according to her wishes. Finally, it stopped at a certain point. Yu Li looked down and saw that the page depicted a long-distance teleportation array. She studied it for a long time, probably understanding how it was to be carved. She murmured, "This magic array is so difficult that even a top-tier blacksmith could probably create it. This formation should be very useful in this war." Yu Li clicked on her communicator and took a photo of the long-distance teleportation array in the magic book and sent it to Yun Xiaoju. "Yu Li, my latest ability, I discovered this. It should be very useful, right? Yu Li, array diagram.jpg. Yu Li, cat peeking out.jpg. Yun Xiaoju, male mother version, let me take a look. Wait a moment. Male mother, yes, it is very useful, and it is more convenient than the portal on Xuanya's side, and it is more economical in materials. Does Ollie hope to hand over this formation diagram to the current joint army? Yu Li, yes. Yun Xiaoju, male mother version, okay. Hand it over to me, and I will have a good talk with them. By the way, Ollie, the area you are in is very close to Fei Yusen. If there is any unexpected situation, you can tell him. Yu Li, huh? Is Fei Yusen here too? Yun Xiaoju, male mother version, after all, he came here when he was free, and he is not the main person in charge of the 10,000 Beasts Hall. Yu Li tilted her head at the message and blinked her bright eyes. Is this saying that Fei Yusen is not doing his job properly? Yun Xiaoju, male mother version, I. And Xuanya will not come to Xingyu Tree Sea in the short term. Ollie should be careful. Yu Li, I know, you have already said a lot before I came. Yun Xiaoju, male mother version, does Ollie think I am nagging? Yu Li, that's not the case. Yun Xiaoju, male mother version, Yu Li, this smiley face is a bit fake. Yun Xiaoju, male mother version, okay, I won't say much, Ollie, go get busy. Yun Xiaoju, male mother version, pat on the head.jpg. Yu Li, okay. Just as Yu Li and other SS-level psychics were heading to various planned areas, in a meeting room at the headquarters of the United Army, a middle-aged general of the Wood clan respectfully bowed to the 4 SSS-level psychics from different forces, expressing his gratitude for their willingness to come from afar to help Xingyu Shuhai overcome this difficult time. These 4 people all have their own unique looks. Although their aura is concealed, they still make people with abilities below S level feel deeply depressed. Fortunately, the abilities of the people in this meeting room are all above them, so they are not affected much. Fei Yusen had little interest in such a meeting. He'd only come because Yuli was there, otherwise those annoying white-haired foxes wouldn't have been able to persuade him. Unfortunately, even if he showed up, he wouldn't see anyone. Thinking of this, he felt a bit bored and turned the pen he'd just picked up. According to the information he gathered, one of the three people beside him was the fortune-teller Pollux from Sea Moon Fjord. It was said that he had a close relationship with the Wood Tribe Queen. Upon hearing the news of the Queen's serious injury, he immediately rushed over and has been bringing the Starry Sky Tree leader with him ever since. He probably came to the border to avenge his friend. One was Prince Lingqi of the Mechanical Royal Court. His special ability was data analysis, and he was probably invited by the Starry Sky Tree Sea to discover the Zerg's weaknesses. The last one was Chao Guangxi, one of the 7 main halls of the Sun Empire. He was considered the most prominent, active, and youngest main hall master in the Sun Empire. It was unclear whether he came voluntarily, or if Yun Xiaozhu had some involvement. Fei Yusen, a blond man who looked like a giant golden retriever, exuding the air of a landowner's naive son, narrowed his emerald eyes slightly as he pondered. Chao Guangxi noticed Fei Yusen's gaze, and gave him a brilliant smile. "What's wrong, Mr. Fei Yusen? Is there something wrong with my attire?" "Nothing's wrong, I'm just curious." Fei Yusen felt a little disgusted by his smile, and silently averted her eyes. Curious about why I'm here?" Chao Guangxi smiled frankly. "There's no orders or anything like that. I'm simply curious about these Zerg, so they came here. These disgusting creatures shouldn't exist. Of course, I also complete my mission of treating and protecting others." With his last words, the Wood Tribe General's expression finally brightened considerably. "Is that so? I see." Fei Yusen nodded expressionlessly, adding another piece of information about him: a fanatical follower of the gods. The Wood Tribe General took a deep breath and said, "We would like to trouble you all to come all the way to aid us in the Xingyu Forest. Once again, we express our sincere gratitude. No need to thank me. After all, the reward is more than enough." Fei Yusen casually nodded at the pebble mark under his eye. He then pointed at a region on the star map and continued, "I'd be right here." Seeing Fei Yusen's quick decision, the other three also chose their respective areas. The brief meeting soon concluded, and the 4 of them rushed to the battlefield. At the same time, Yuli, who was resting with her eyes closed, received a message from her deputy general, announcing their arrival. Yuli reached the observation deck atop the starship, gazing at the 2 emerald planets approaching. These 2 nearby natural planets were surrounded by golden rings. She frowned, knowing those rings were Zerg starships. Mei Qingzi, standing beside her, immediately ordered the starships to fire at the locations of the rings. The dazzling laser cannons streaked through the air like meteors, landing on the rings and instantly destroying Zerg starships. However, the Zerg quickly reacted and began to attack them. Of course, Yuli wouldn't let the enemy attack her. She looked at Mei Qingzi and said, "I leave this place to you." "Yes," Mei Qingzi responded crisply. Yuli flashed into the void, looking at the 2 Zergs standing on the other side. They still bore some of the Zerg's characteristics, with swaying tentacles on their heads and hardened armor on their hands and feet. The 2 Zerg were thrilled to see Yuli appear, SS-level Esper. "We finally meet one these days." They looked at her with the same savage eyes as a tiger, sulking for days, sees its prey, salivating. Yuli raised an eyebrow. This was the second time she'd been treated like food. Sharp golden blades converged as their domains expanded, and a giant, golden-patterned spider, the size of a planet, appeared in the void. An invisible pressure spread across the endless void, affecting the starship's Mei Qingzi, and the others were aboard. Mei Qingzi, seeing the spider's shadow obscuring the sky, felt a surge of anxiety. She hadn't expected the Zerg in this area to be twins. She looked worriedly at the girl, who looked dwarfed by the shadow. "I wonder what she'd do." Yuli wasn't nervous. She raised her hand, and the magic book that had been floating in the air erupted with a blaze of light, transforming into a boundless, translucent wall of light to block the spider's terrifying slash. Bang! She looked at the wall of light, which seemed quite thick. She quickly dispatched a message to Mei Qingzi from the starships, instructing her to teleport them all to the natural planet and rescue them immediately. A complex magic circle enveloped the starships, instantly teleporting them all away. This movement clearly misled the 2 Zerg, who thought Yuli and her companions were trying to escape, and their attacks intensified. A crack appeared in the wall of light. They also rushed towards the girl at full speed, trying to get her to stay. Yuli was speechless at this, but soon became excited again. "There's no need to rush over to die like this. But now that they've teleported away, I can just let loose and fight. Chapter 123. After all, she has been working hard to make various potions and strange objects in the past few months. Although she has also practiced on the Star Network, her supernatural power has reached the SS level, and there is no obvious progress in the Star Network practice. Yuli clasped her hands together, and the golden stars in her hands shone with dazzling white light. The originally restrained momentum now dissipated, and the lines of rules in the void fell and turned into a pure white river of light surrounding her body. Ding, ding, ding. There seemed to be a series of ethereal bell sounds in the void. The pure white gauze covered the girl's platinum hair, like a floating white cloud. The white silk wrapped her delicate body, as if to integrate the brightness and purity of the day into the fabric. The delicate texture on the satin, like the refraction of sunlight, exuded a faint light, making people feel like they were in the dream of the day. Under her ears, she wore a pair of sun-shaped earrings made of aurora gold pearls and opals, which were dazzling and brilliant. A pair of dazzling huge wings spread out behind her, like the dawn breaking through the darkness, shining brightly. Yuli looked at the power level on her personal panel, which was SS 60%. 50% of this was increased from the golden chains that sealed Moe returning to her body. She wanted to see how much her power had increased. Yuli looked at the phantom of the golden spider with the same planet that was rushing towards her with great momentum. Her golden eyes drooped, her long eyelashes trembled slightly, and she whispered softly, "Holy judgment." The mighty river of light surrounding her emitted endless light. In an instant, the sky suddenly brightened, and the originally gray void was like daylight. The pure light illuminated the entire void. A steady, gentle chanting echoed through the void. Buzz! Pillars of light descended, seemingly piercing the heavens. As the white light enveloped the entire void, the massive golden spider phantom couldn't withstand the onslaught for long, shattered beneath the powerful impact. The two Zerg followed suit, slowly vanishing in a haze of pure, snow-white light after a few moments. Even Mei Qingzi and the others, who had been teleported to the natural star by Yuli, looked up at the sky, which had suddenly brightened. She also seemed to faintly hear someone singing. Perhaps it was an illusion? She quickly shook her head, dismissing the thought. However, the sight of the white light filling the sky brought a sigh of relief. It seemed the superior she encountered this time was a very powerful Esper, despite his youthful appearance. Deputy General. Just as Mei Qingzi was pondering this, she suddenly heard her subordinates rushing over, their expressions filled with excitement. What's wrong? You look so anxious? She looked at her subordinate and asked. The subordinate's face was a little dusty, perhaps from the rush of travel, but her eyes were bright as she spoke excitedly. When the white light fell on the Zerg, they instantly turned into a puddle of water. And the white light has healing powers for us, which will be very helpful in helping these migrating wood tribe members. We think the mission in this area will be completed quickly. After rambling on, she looked at Mei Qingzi, her eyes still sparkling, practically sparkling, and continued, "Is this the new commander's special ability? It's incredible." Mei Qingzi didn't expect Yuli to be so strong. She blinked and changed her mind. She was an extremely powerful psychic. It would be reassuring to have such a psychic as a leader. She smiled and nodded and said, "Since everything is going well, you should speed up the progress." Yes. With Yuli's full-strength attack, this area was like a pure white sun emitting light. Seeing that the two Zergs were destroyed by her attack, Yuli had a full understanding of her current combat power. Seeing that no Zergs of the same level came over, she quickly flew towards the two natural stars. However, her attack this time attracted the attention of people in other areas. Some people speculated in a low voice, "Is this someone from the Sun Empire? How come they are so strong, but we haven't heard of their names?" No, it looks like they are from the Yunshan Federation. Huh? Even Chao Guangxi from the Sun Empire, who was very far away from Yuli, seemed to have sensed something. During the break in the battle, he looked towards where Yuli was and said with great interest, "I didn't expect that there would be such a powerful light-type mutant in the Yunshan Federation. You can go and see it after this fight." The Golden Spider, who was fighting with Fei Yusen, looked unhappy for a moment. Fei Yusen chuckled, "It's a pity that your two subordinates died, but I don't think you have to mind it. After all, you will meet them soon." The Golden Spider sneered when he heard this, and his offensive became more powerful, but his attack was still firmly blocked by Fei Yusen. Finally, the Golden Spider said angrily, "Are you going to keep defending like this?" As his voice fell, waves appeared around him. The number of extremely sharp golden blades that were already covering the sky and the sun increased a lot. In the void, they attacked the smiling demon man in the distance like golden waves. Fei Yusen's expression did not change when he heard this. He still had a smile on his face. Facing this fierce wave, the green light turned into a light curtain, and he still blocked the attack like a mountain. His eyes fell on the beautiful curved eyebrows of the Zerg in the center of the golden light, and he murmured, "The battle on Miss Yuli's side is over, so there should be time to look up at the stars. Really, defense is not my forte." The emerald earrings on Fei Yusin's ears swayed gently, and he looked at the golden spider and said, "Since you want me to attack, let's see if you can take it." As his voice fell, the green light shone brightly, and the colorful peacock tail feathers in the void stretched out to their heart's content. The gorgeous tail feathers were like a large blooming flower, delicate and beautiful. The colorful screen feathers looked like an exquisite feather fan from a distance, with black, green, and yellow colors intertwined, and the tail at the end was like an eye watching closely. The huge wings full of brilliance were like a huge palette, with various colors perfectly blended together, exuding charming brilliance, intoxicating. Even the golden spider that had been fighting with Fei Yusin was stunned for a moment when it saw the colorful light covering the sky, as if it was shocked by this incomparable beauty. At that moment, the brilliant light transformed into a peacock phantom with a high-pitched and melodious cry, charging towards him with a majestic might. Just as he was about to strike back, the brilliant light reappeared before his eyes. He felt as if he were completely engulfed in a kaleidoscope of colors, unable to extricate himself. His consciousness struggled desperately within it. Only then did he realize that the enemy's ability was actually an illusion, similar to the phantom crickets, but it was too late. The multicolored peacock phantom easily dispelled his territory with its sharp claws. The flood of golden blades could not reach the peacock phantom, as if the phantom were merely an illusion, yet the peacock's attack was real. A terrifying premonition of death began to resonate within the golden spider. He tried to call upon the other Zerg in his spiritual sea, but it was of no use. Perhaps the illusion had already severed his connection with him. Knowing he couldn't make contact, he tried to struggle again, but unfortunately, he was already trapped in this terrifying illusion, unable to break free. The peacock phantom didn't give him the chance. It soared high, its magnificent tail feathers folded, ready to strike the golden spider with a powerful blow. A dazzling emerald light descended, and the human-shaped insect's head was instantly torn apart, transforming into its original form. The mountain-like golden spider fell into the void, completely dead. Fei Yusin stared at the spider's corpse for a moment, then, with a hint of disgust, took out a new storage bracelet and stored it entirely, not even the severed head. Yuli, who was sitting on Xiron's star, seemed to sense something. She touched the peacock tattoo on her wrist and looked up at the sky. There, a dazzling, multicolored light shone, like a peacock slowly spreading its tail feathers, attracting the attention of his beloved. Just then, her communication device received a message. "Fei Yusin, pretty peacock Ali, does the peacock spread look beautiful? If you like it, I show it to you later. Fei Yusin, pretty peacock cat's expectant eyes.jpg." Yuli laughed at his message, but it was indeed beautiful. Just as Fei Yusin killed the golden spider with a single blow, the three people fighting the other Zerg and the Zerg all sensed the fall of an SSS-level Esper. However, looking at the Zerg's grim expression, they instantly concluded that it was the Zerg who had died this time. Bai Guichan's expression was grim. He had died without receiving any message from the golden spider. He looked at the fiercely attacking sea monster before him. His figure flashed, and endless white snow froze the dark waves for a moment. He then fled the battlefield and flew away, commanding all the Zerg to return to defend through his spiritual sea. Pollux felt a little resentful at seeing the white ghost cicada leave so cleanly, but there was nothing she could do about it. At the Allied Corps headquarters, the Wood Tribe general gasped upon receiving the news that Fei Yusin had successfully killed an SSS-level Zerg, somewhat impressed by the extraordinary strength of this young Peacock Tribe leader from the Myriad Beasts Palace. At the same time, he also received a steady stream of news that the Zerg had withdrawn, likely due to the loss of an SSS-level Zerg. He also felt a little reluctant to let them go like that. After all, these Zerg had directly killed 2 SSS-level Espers from their Xingyi Tree Sea, and another was seriously injured, unlikely to recover anytime soon. However, he also understood that the current situation was quite good, considering that the Zerg that had been killing Espers everywhere on the natural star had retreated. Finally, he sighed silently. Although they had retreated now, the Zerg would certainly not let it go so easily. He just didn't know what they planned to do next. Chapter 124. After the Zerg retreated, Yuli successfully completed her mission. Upon returning to the Allied Corps' headquarters, she received a message from Yun Xiaozhu. The general idea was that the blueprints she had submitted had been purchased by the other 7 major factions. In addition to a large sum of money, they also received 14 rule crystals as compensation. Of course, this was only the purchase price. she would continue to receive a share of the profits from the subsequent construction of such a space array. Yuli stared at the words rule crystals on the communicator, stunned for a moment, somewhat surprised. These major powers were willing to exchange rule crystals for such a precious SSS-level treasure. After all, rule crystals could directly enhance an SSS-level Esper's mastery of the rules, making them exceedingly rare. After all, once an Esper reaches the SSS level, most potions and treasures are of no use. But upon closer examination, the benefits of completing such a long-distance teleportation array would likely be immense, which made sense. So does this count as sudden wealth? Yuli was still pondering when she saw 7 large sums of money transferred into her personal account. She stared at the string of numbers on the account, and her mood instantly eased. Yuan Xiaozhu told her that the Crystal of Rules would take a few days to obtain, and that he would personally deliver it to Yuli later. Is Yuan Xiaozhu coming? Yuli murmured, then heard a familiar voice echo from not far away. Its unrestrained elegance carried a subtle, low, and magnetic quality that drew her in. Ali, why are you thinking about that? Again? Am I not pretty? As he spoke, Fei Yusin leaned closer, asking in a sly, Ali, did you see my fight again? Was the peacock spread beautiful? If you like it, I can do it again. Yuli felt like she was being stalked by a passionate golden retriever. Coming to her senses, she quickly tore the man off her, saying, it was beautiful, but forget about another one. After all, this might be a bit too powerful for a Zerg. Fei Yusin brushed her hair out of her eyes, stood up straight, and asked seriously, why? After Yuli explained, Fei Yusin burst out laughing. She was immediately furious, and pulled at a single strand of his long hair. The two of them played around for a while, before getting down to business. Yuli recounted to Fei Yusin how Yuan Xiaozhu would return with the Crystal of Rules, and how he had previously given Yuan Xiaozhu the blueprint. The enchanting man before him curled his lips, somewhat indignantly saying, why did Ali go to Yuan Xiaozhu? It's obvious I'm the most suitable person for this kind of negotiation. Or am I just that unreliable in Ali's eyes? Yuli, who indeed felt Fei Yusin was somewhat unreliable, had her eyes shift unconsciously, but she firmly denied it. No, I don't think so at all. Fei Yusin didn't dwell on the topic. He stroked his chin and said, however, since they've given her all the rule crystals, and there are so many of them, Ali's superpowers will probably reach the peak of SS level soon. His gaze fell on the girl before him, and his beautiful eyes softened slightly. He continued, Ali, you can try to break through when the time comes. After all, given the current situation, the stronger Ali becomes, the more reassured he feels. Yeah, I think so too. Yuli nodded. And if I break through, we can fight together. Fei Yusin smiled deepened upon hearing this. He couldn't help but reach out and pinch her soft cheek, saying, Ali often forgets about us when she's fighting on her own. Did she? Really? That wasn't the case when we were traveling before. She was about to recount how she'd forgotten about them so easily, when Yuli quickly covered his mouth. The next 2 days were uneventful. Yuan Xiaozhu arrived and handed the 14 rule crystals to Yuli. Yuli lifted the rule crystal, which was twice the size of her palms. Upon closer inspection, she discovered a layer of rainbow condensed within the transparent crystal, flowing through it like a dream. Seeing her pick up one like a child, then put one down, then pick up another, as if trying to find the difference, Yuan Xiaozhu explained with a smile, the rule crystal was born in the black storm of the void, so it's basically the same. Then should I absorb it now? Yuli asked, dragging the rule crystal between her hands. Yuan Xiaozhu raised his hand to cast a barrier and nodded to Yuli, saying, don't worry about breaking through. I always be by your side. Okay. Yuli smiled and agreed. Yuli closed her eyes. The lines of rule from the void descended, entwining with those of the rule crystal. The colorful rules of the rule crystal flowed into her body, and the river of rules surrounding her began to visibly increase. The power progress in her personal dashboard began to increase steadily. Soon, the rule crystal in her hand was consumed, and finally, the colorful trace disappeared completely. Yuli consumed 4 crystals of rules in a row, and felt satisfied. The next step was to break through. Yuli had read a lot of books on enlightenment that Fei Yusin and the others had found before, and had a general understanding of mastering the rules. She raised her hand, and the river of rules surrounding her gathered continuously, emitting a faint golden light. She first controlled a strand of rule power as thin as a silk thread to turn into a blooming flower in her hand, and then into a clear stream of water, soft floating clouds, or burning flames. There were countless changes, and finally after she completely mastered it, and did it at will, it merged with her. As she became more and more proficient, it was no longer just a strand but continued to increase. Finally, the river of rules surrounding her was controlled by her and merged into her body, her bones, her blood, her spirit and her soul. And with this integration, her whole person began to change, like a beautiful jade being polished again, emitting a scorching glow, and like a dusty pearl brushing off the dust, the originally warm light became more dazzling, making people dazzled and unconsciously attracted. Mo Yin floated in the air and stared at the girl blankly. He almost subconsciously wanted to change back to his original form and hold the girl in his arms, not letting her leave, and not letting others peek at his treasure, his star. Just as he stretched out his tentacles, Yuli opened his eyes and looked at the pink little octopus in front of him, showing his usual smile, holding the little octopus in his arms and rubbing it and pinching his tentacles. Mo Yin, actually, it's not bad to be held in the arms of the star. Yun Xiaozhu, who received the original body's thoughts, held his forehead, feeling that the original body was being eaten dead. After a kiss and a hug, Yuli happily approached Yun Xiaozhu and said, Yun Xiaozhu, I've made a breakthrough. Ah, I think it was quite easy this time, very smooth. Yun Xiaozhu lowered his head to meet the girl's bright eyes. Her watery gaze reflected him, and the realization deepened the curve of his lips, which had been curled up ever since. But he also lamented that he had clearly been completely dominated. At the moment Fei Yusen killed the golden spider on a golden planet in a distant galaxy, Freya, who had been napping, suddenly opened her eyes. Her affectionate eyes were cold and silent. She released her vast, ocean-like spiritual sea, attempting to search for the island belonging to the golden spider, but found nothing. It was as if the golden spider had never left a mark in her spiritual sea. This meant that the golden spider was most likely dead. As she considered this possibility, her emotions surged. The layers of silk in the magnificent palace were blown by the gust of wind, and the ornaments beneath the curtains jingled. The jade moth suddenly appeared behind Freya, gently hugged her, and asked, Why is your majesty so angry? Did the white cicada and the others anger your majesty? No. Freya closed her eyes and leaned against the jade moth, muttering, It was the golden spider. Who died? The jade moth raised an eyebrow at this. He remembered that the guards all had the mark left by the queen in their spiritual seas. If anything unexpected happened, the queen could directly control their spiritual power to save them. But in this case, the golden spider died without notifying the queen. This meant that the enemy might have some means of controlling its spiritual sea, perhaps with the same power as the phantom cricket. But the most important thing now is his majesty. His eyes fell on the girl leaning on him. She had her eyes closed and her face was a little pale. It was obvious that she was in a very bad mood. Seeing his majesty like this, Yuban Ma felt very distressed and said, Your majesty, you don't have to be so sad. We, the guards, are all for you. No, the entire Zerg exists for you. Golden Spider would probably blame himself if he knew that you were so sad after his death. Freya heard what he said and opened her eyes and said, It was my decision-making error that caused his death. Your majesty. Okay, Au, there is no need to say anything more. Freya looked at the palace where the Zerg were hatched and said, Au, you will put all the crystal cores and 90% of the inventory you obtained before into the hatching pool. She stretched out her white jade-like hands, slowly clenched them, and said, Next time, I will make them pay the price. Yuban Moth was slightly stunned when she heard her say this, meaning that she meant to go to war against that star field, or even that his majesty might have to go to the battlefield in person in the subsequent wars. After all, even if his majesty has a vast and boundless spiritual sea, the protection given will continue to weaken as the distance increases. But he didn't want his majesty to participate in the war. After all, the purpose of their guard team's existence was to prevent his majesty from participating in the war again. Just when Yubanma wanted to say something, Freya turned around and put her slender fingers on the man's lips, stopping him from saying the next thing. Freya smiled and said, Au, this is an order. Knowing that it was not to be refuted, Yubanma lowered his eyes, half knelt down and said, Yes. Follow your instructions. Well, that's right. Freya smiled and nodded. At the same time, he contacted Baiguishan through the spiritual sea and told them to temporarily distance themselves from Xingyu Shuhai and not to continue to entangle. After giving the order, she looked at the jade moth and said, All the rest of your guards should set off. Your majesty? We can only feel at ease if at least one or two of you stay with us. This? Freya thought about it and agreed. She let the jade moth stay and let the guards take the separated insect nest to meet up with the white ghost cicada first, while continuing to attack the Xingyu Tree Sea. Chapter 125. As Yuli broke through to the SS level, Yun Xiaozhu checked carefully and found nothing abnormal, so he rushed back to Yunshin Federation. Fei Yusin was a little jealous when he heard about Yuli's promotion. After all, she was in a meeting and had no time to come. However, he thought that Yun Xiaozhu had calculated the time to come. Damn it! The news of Yuli's breakthrough was not hidden from others, and it spread quickly, which made the people of various forces stationed here more confident. At the same time, they were also shocked by her breakthrough speed. It took her so long to break through again, and it seemed like there was no bottleneck. It was also the right time for the United Corps to propose the construction of a long-distance teleportation array, and at the same time thank Yuli for selflessly providing the blueprint. As soon as the news came out, these forces were excited. After all, if there was a long-distance teleportation array, both supply and logistics would be much more convenient. Moreover, if this teleportation array is used in their own forces, the benefits are probably enormous. They have applied to the United Corps to join and find out how to trade with this teleportation array. As for Yuli, because her own ability level has reached the SSS level, ordinary people can't see her at all, so it is very quiet. However, she also met 3 SSS level ability users stationed at the headquarters during this period. Among them, Chao Guangxi from the Sunwheel Empire was very interested in her, which made Fei Yusin, who had been guarding Yuli, very unhappy and almost fought. It was Yuli who finally stood up and exchanged communication methods with him, and at the same time said that she would definitely go back to the Sunwheel Empire later, and Chao Guangxi left reluctantly. Fei Yusin said quietly, "Ollie, why did you add this mentally ill idiot?" Yuli held her forehead and, watching Chao Guangxi walk away, whispered, "Isn't it hard to refuse such a kind offer? And if I didn't, would I let them both fight here?" The girl Fei Yusin noticed looked at her with a mixture of resignation and rebuke. "He's so annoying, and he keeps asking you, Ollie, to convert to some ethereal god with him. How can I not be angry? Although you're right, but I shouldn't have said that out loud then." Yuli complained inwardly, also curiously asking, "Do gods really exist?" Fei Yusin heard her question, looked into her eyes, and uncontrollably reached out to ruffle the girl's soft hair. He smiled and said, "Of course not now, but it said there were, long, long ago." Yuli raised her hand to remove the man's hand from her head, glaring at the demonic man in front of her. "Just talk. Are you messing up her hair? Are you going to fight?" Yuli immediately disregarded Fei Yusin and distanced herself from him, combing her somewhat messy hair. Seeing Yuli's reaction, Fei Yusin came over to apologize and took over the responsibility of fixing her hair. Yuli pondered his answer. "You said there were gods long ago. Could these gods be SSS-level psychics of the time, simply mistaken for gods?" Fei Yusin combed her long, smooth hair with an ebony comb. He lifted a lock of hair and tied it with an azure ribbon, tying it with a beautiful bow and adding a sparkling sapphire. At the same time, he replied, "Not really. Gods back then were supposedly more powerful than SSS-level espers." Yuli took out a mirror, checked her hairstyle, and nodded with satisfaction. She looked up at Fei Yusin with a hint of surprise and asked, "Why do you seem so knowledgeable about that period of history? After all, I've always been well informed." Fei Yusin smiled. "Is that so?" Yuli felt something was amiss, but before she could think it through, she heard a beep outside the room signaling a visitor. Fei Yusin frowned, feeling somewhat annoyed. Chao Guangxi had just left, and now another one was coming. He didn't show it though, following Yuli like an oversized dog. Yuli opened the door and saw a breathtakingly beautiful woman, or rather a siren, with long, curly light blue hair. Upon seeing Yuli, her eyes, tinged with melancholy, lit up. After a slight bow, she said, "Miss Yuli, I apologize for my intrusion." Yuli recognized the stunning siren before her as one of the 4 SSS-level espers stationed here, and she was curious as to her reason for coming. "Nothing, please come in, Miss Pollux." She offered a gentle smile. Relieved to see she wasn't offended, Pollux followed Yuli into the room. She was met with Fei Yusin clinging to her like a rice cake, a stark contrast to his usual carefree demeanor. However, she considered her request, believing it didn't require a 2-person discussion, and said, "I wonder if your healing abilities have improved since Yuli's power upgrade?" Pollux had clearly been privy to Yuli's previous intelligence. She'd already known that Yuli, while serving as regional commander, had directly healed everyone in that area. Having a healer with such a large range was extremely rare. If it weren't for Yuli's exceptional offensive power, the Allied Legion probably wouldn't have sent one of them to fight the Zerg. Yuli pondered for a moment. "Well, I think there's an improvement, but I haven't healed anyone since I've been upgraded, so I'm not sure exactly how much." "Then, Miss Yuli, could you please come with me to the Star Territory tree?" Pollux asked, his eyes filled with anxiety and pleading, a look that was heartbreaking and unbearable. He couldn't bear to see her so distressed. Yuli felt a little overwhelmed by her expression. After all, the sight of tears in the eyes of such a beautiful woman was truly pathetic. Fei Yusen, however, was practically fuming with envy at Yuli's expression. He looked at Pollux and said directly, "Miss Pollux, are you asking Ali to heal Her Highness Castor, Queen of the Wood Tribe?" "Yes." Pollux felt a little embarrassed by being directly told his purpose, but he nodded in agreement. "Are the healers in the starry sea of trees unable to help? And I remember Chao Guangxi was also considered a light type, so he should be considered a healer?" Yuli asked curiously. After all, she had only just broken through. Was Pollux's calling her here a bit hasty? Pollux shook his head at Yuli's question, giving a wry smile. "We tried every healer in the starry sea of trees, to no avail. As for the Sun Empire, we've hired an SSS-level healer, but it's been ineffective. Chao Guangxi isn't much of a healer. Having him heal people below S level is fine, but above S level, he just hastened their demise. As for why I came here, I can feel that the power of rules that you, Miss Yuli, master should be related to vitality." Pollux looked at Yuli and said, "Yes." Yuli nodded. After getting Yuli's recognition, Pollux's mood was obviously a little higher. She said, "I think a healer like you with vitality will have a stronger and gentler healing ability than ordinary healers." "Is that so?" She hadn't noticed it before. Yuli tilted her head and looked at Fei Yusen. When she saw him nod, she knew that what Pollux said was true. "Of course, it doesn't matter if you can't cure it. I will still give you the reward. This is the deposit." Pollux said, took out a super large and beautifully packaged gift box from the bracelet, opened it, and placed it in front of Yuli. Yuli was almost blinded by the light emitted by the aquamarine that was the size of 2 wash basins. She closed her eyes and quickly closed the gift box, saying in a somewhat shocked tone, "This is the tears of Poseidon? Can the tears of Poseidon be this big?" She knew that even a Poseidon's tears the size of a fingernail could be sold at a sky-high price. After all, this treasure can subtly improve a person's qualifications after being absorbed, which is very rare. Fei Yusen nodded in satisfaction when he saw the deposit. He knew very well how rich Highway Fjord was, and such a large Poseidon's tears as a deposit was very sincere. "Yes." Pollux laughed when he saw her shocked look. The energy in this Poseidon's tears can be regarded as SSS level. After Miss Yuli absorbs it, she should be more adept at mastering her own power of rules. If Miss Yuli can cure Castor later, you will not be disappointed with the reward. Seeing that it has come to this, Yuli nodded and agreed to make an appointment with Pollux to go to Xingyu Tree territory together tomorrow. Of course, she would still bring Fei Yusen, who was watching the show. After Yuli sent Pollux away, she was still a little shocked by the huge Poseidon's tears on the wooden table. She looked at the Poseidon's tears, and then at Fei Yusen and muttered, "Why are you all so rich?" She used to think that SSS-level items should be considered rare, but now it seems not to be the case. Fei Yusen laughed when she heard her words, but still explained, "Pollux is the high priest of the Sea Moon Bay and has a very high status. Moreover, the seafood in the Sea Moon Bay is extremely rich, so it is normal for him to be rich. Ali can absorb this Poseidon's tears." After all, he was a little worried that there would be some hidden dangers if Yuli improved like before. Although the possibility was not great, now that he had this Poseidon's tears, he could put his mind at ease. "Okay." Yuli agreed after hearing what he said. She opened the gift box and looked at the gem that had not been cut by someone, and whose color was like a deep sea. She raised her hand and placed it on it. A day later, Yuli successfully absorbed this Poseidon's tears, and her spirit and body were further transformed. Among them, her mental power successfully broke through the SSS level, and reached the same balance as the level of her special ability. Pollux saw Yuli like this, and nodded with satisfaction. Taking the two to a small garden in the palace of Xingyu Tree territory, a fist-sized flower spirit flew out from the flowers. "Lord Pollux, you are back. Are you not injured?" The little flower spirit Tuanchuan looked at Yuli and the others curiously and asked, "Are these two the healers brought by the Lord?" "No, don't worry. Yes, these two are the healers I invited back." "Tuanchuan, thank you for your help." Pollux nodded. "No trouble." Tuanchuan shook his head, raised his hand, and a star-like light fell. A complex array pattern fell, and teleported the 3 people away in an instant. After the 3 people disappeared, Tuanchuan looked at the place where they disappeared with some expectation in his eyes. Chapter 126. Yuli felt dazed for a while, but Fei Yusen beside her held her, and looked at the girl with some worry. Yuli came back to her senses, and looked into the man's deep green eyes full of worry, and shook her head slightly. She looked up, and saw that they seemed to be teleported to a secret room. The enclosed space was dotted with snow-white flowers emitting a faint glow, illuminating the space. In the center of this elegantly decorated secret room was a huge pool. The water in the pool was an extremely beautiful and clear green color, and sleeping in the pool was the queen of the Xingyu Tree Sea, Castor. Yuli followed Pollux to the edge of the pool and said uncertainly, "What is the water in this pool?" "These are all the juices of the star tree. These juices are very useful for stabilizing Castor's injuries," Pollux said, as if she was thinking of the Zerg's sneak attack and took away the heart of the star tree directly. She was in a bad mood, but she still suppressed these emotions and looked at Yuli and said, "Please, Miss Yuli." "Okay, I try." Yuli nodded seriously. She put her hands together, and the golden stars bloomed in her hands with dazzling white light. The pure white gauze fell down like a floating white cloud. The white silk fell layer by layer, and the big sun-shaped earrings under her ears swayed slightly, flashing dazzling brilliance, and the flawless white wings spread out from behind her. Pollux was stunned when he saw her extremely pure clothes and the wings behind her. "Miss Yuli has the blood of the Winged Clan. Doesn't this outfit look like a true member of the Sun Empire's royal family?" Yuli smiled brilliantly at her question. "No, it's just a manifestation of my supernatural power." "Okay." Pollux was momentarily bewildered by her smile. Normally, she would have admired it, but unfortunately, her mind was now preoccupied with Castor. She quickly recovered and clenched her fists nervously. Yuli produced a glass lamp, its colors vibrant, like flowing clouds. Yuli continuously channeled her power of rules into the glass lamp, and a soft light emanated from it. She lowered the lamp into the pool, and the lamp, emitting a pure white glow, began to sink. The light fell on the blonde woman lying underwater, her eyes closed, as if she were asleep. Through the lamp, Yuli sensed a purple mist clinging to the Wood Tribe Queen, emanating from her supernatural crystal core. Yuli tried to purify the mist from her body, but her efforts proved ineffective, and the mist soon began to dissipate again from the crystal core. Yuli increased her psychic energy output, and the power of rules transformed into a vast river of light, flowing from her body into the delicate lamp. The light emanating from the lamp grew increasingly brighter, nearly illuminating the entire chamber. Pollux noticed Castor underwater, and his previously closed eyes trembled. Yuli carefully controlled her power of rules, and entered the crystal core, purifying it of the purple mist. Afterward, somewhat exhausted, she sat down by the pool. Fei Yusin immediately noticed her condition, and came over to her, handing her a bottle of psychic energy supplement. Pollux looked at Yuli nervously. "Miss Yuli, what is her current situation?" Just as she asked, ripples appeared in the pool, and the person who had been sleeping under the water had woken up. Castor came out of the pool and looked at Pollux, who was worried, and said apologetically, "Sorry, Pollux, for making you so worried." Pollux was very excited to see Castor finally wake up. His affectionate eyes turned red. He turned his head awkwardly, but said, "I'm not worried about you. I'm worried that if there is no one in charge of the Xingyu Tree Sea, the Xingyu Tree Sea will be destroyed by the Zerg." Castor smiled when he heard her words. She had known Pollux for many years, and naturally knew her character. She came to Pollux. She leaned forward and said, "I know that Pollux was able to support Xingyu Shuhai in the first place. I am very grateful." When Pollux looked at her face, which was as elegant and refined as an orchid in the valley, the words that were originally intended to mock her turned into, "It's good that you know." Castor curled his lips when he saw her like this, and her eyes shifted to Yuli. She lifted her complicated skirt and performed a court salute to the girl. She said, "Thank you very much for your treatment. If it weren't for you, I'm afraid I wouldn't wake up in a short time." Yuli saw that she was so cautious, and hurriedly said, "It's okay, it's actually Miss Pollux's request to come here for treatment." "Oh!" Castor raised his eyebrows when he heard it, but Pollux behind her said angrily, "It was your elder's request. I was just acting on his behalf." As I said, Yuli would have been fine if she hadn't accepted those 2 basin-sized tears of Poseidon. Castor, seeing Pollux about to explode, stopped his teasing and inquired about what happened while she was unconscious. Pollux and Yuli both briefly recounted the tragic deaths of 2 SSS-level aspirants from the Wood Tribe, one of whom was seriously injured, the formation of the United Corps, and the various support it had received, and finally, the recent war in which Fei Yusin had killed the golden-striped spider, causing the Zerg to temporarily retreat. Castor's face darkened at this information. She pinched her brows and said, "These Zerg won't retreat so easily. From the memories I've retrieved, they might even move their hive here." "Memory?" Yuli was puzzled. Castor nodded and said, "Yes, this is considered a secret method of the Wood Tribe. I received the memories of a fellow Zerg from the Zerg Star region before his death. A Zerg nest? If we move here, we'd probably face a constant stream of Zerg. Fei Yusin said, her beautiful eyes narrowing. Yes. By the way, Master Yuli, I wonder if you have time to help heal the seriously injured Wood tribe member. Castor looked at Yuli and pleaded. Of course. Yuli nodded in agreement without objection. A few days later, Yuli took some time to heal the seriously injured psychic and returned to the Allied Corps headquarters with a generous reward. On their return, Yuli and Fei Yusin saw a group of technicians constructing a long-distance space array and were amazed. That's incredibly fast. Fei Yusin thought it was nothing, saying, after all, we don't know when the Zerg will return. The sooner these teleportation arrays are built, the greater their effectiveness will be. After saying that, he looked at Yuli and told her, Ollie, you should hurry up and absorb all the Sea God's tears and the previous rule crystals that can be absorbed in the next few days. Yuli was speechless when he heard his words. Isn't this a bit of a waste? Aren't Sea God's tears and rule crystals best absorbed once a month? How can this be considered a waste? Time is tight now, and Ollie doesn't want me to be distracted when fighting with others. Fei Yusin said, as he was about to hug the girl and give her a sticky hug. Unfortunately, Yuli dodged it easily, and she said with some disgust, Okay, I know. A month passed quickly, and with the awakening of Castor, the originally chaotic Xingyu Shuhai quickly returned to normal, and those residents who left the original natural star were quickly resettled. The atmosphere in the Joint Corps headquarters was getting more and more solemn. After all, they didn't know when this brutal enemy would attack again. On this day, a harsh bell rang in the Joint Corps headquarters, reminding people that there was an enemy invasion. Yuli, Fei Yusin, and other 5 people gathered together. Ling Qi from the Mechanical King's Court looked in a certain direction of the void and said, I detected a huge amount of energy fluctuations over there. It is speculated that at least 10 SSS-level psychics will descend here. After saying this conclusion, everyone else fell silent. Pollux said in disbelief, How can there be so many SSS level? Ling Qi raised his hand to his forehead, and countless streams of information passed through his eyes. He concluded, According to the various information provided by His Highness Castor before, it is judged that the Zerg should come out in full force this time, and according to the news that they had obtained 2 SSS level and dozens of SS level crystal cores before, these crystal cores should not have hatched new SSS level Zerg. This is good news for now. Pollux held his forehead. This is not good news. And is this space blocked? Yes. Are they trying to block us here and kill us one by one? What ugly bugs. Looking up at Guangxi, a crack appeared in the void. The Wood Clan general looked at Yuli, who looked a little nervous, and said, If the news can't be spread, I wonder if the space teleportation array can be used? This should be possible? This needs to be tried, but isn't the teleportation array not built yet? Yuli said uncertainly. Only 3 have been built. I order someone to try. The Wood Clan general gave an order, and soon the news came. The teleportation was successful. The general was relieved immediately, looked at the 5 people in front of him with different styles and momentum, and saluted respectfully. Please drag these Zergs out. This is nothing. Pollux waved his hand. The crack in the void expanded in an instant, and a group of majestic Zergs walked out of the crack. Finally, 11 Zergs stood in the void and overlooked the natural star. The void ant directly expanded its domain, and finally looked at the others and said, Okay, no one will disturb us now, you can go. One of the women with gorgeous red hair laughed when she heard the words of the void ant. You must watch the door, otherwise if the food runs away, the queen might remove you from the guard team. After all, the last time the golden spider was killed by someone right under your and the white ghost cicada's noses. Speaking of this, the void ant's expression was not very good, and he retorted stiffly, Li Huang, don't let the food peck your eyes blinded by it. No one will save you then. Li Huang snorted and said, I won't. Huang Guang Cricket listened to their quarrel and shook his head and said, Okay, you two, Her Majesty the Queen has issued an order to make them pay the price. The other Zergs became serious when they heard the 4 words of Her Majesty the Queen. After all, Her Majesty has personally ordered it, so they will naturally complete it well and ensure that Her Majesty will not be disappointed. Chapter 127. 10 insect generals quickly arrived above the planet. The powerful and mysterious aura around them, which was superior to everyone else, spread all over the sky in an instant, shaking the void in an instant, and setting off violent whirlwinds. The wind that was about to tear the sky and the earth apart hit the protective shield of the green planet directly, making a series of sharp explosions. In the meeting room, The general of the Wood clan quickly and orderly commanded the well-trained personnel at all levels to retreat to the fortress, while he was also observing the changes in the sky. Pollux, Yuli and others stood at the highest point of this solid steel fortress and looked at the sky. The sky was no longer blue, but presented a sense of oppression and suffocation as if dark clouds were pressing down on the city. Lingqi closed his eyes, as if sensing something. He opened his eyes, and reported to everyone the location of the 10 zergs he saw. Pollux frowned. This position. This directly surrounded the planet, and if they attack with all their strength, it is estimated that there will be nothing left of the planet. Yuli obviously thought of this and said, "This will directly wipe us out." Fei Yusen laughed and asked, "Yes, Yuli is afraid?" Yuli blinked and looked at Fei Yusen, who looked like Ollie. "If you are afraid, you can hide in my arms," and thought, "I was quite scared at first, but seeing Fei Yusen's heartless appearance, it seems that I am not so scared anymore." She snorted and said, "If there is no support, I will definitely be afraid." The implication is that now that there is support, of course she is not afraid. Lingqi nodded in agreement with Yuli, saying, "We just need to hold out for a while." Chao Guangxi, who was standing silently nearby, nodded in agreement with Lingqi. "But our problem now is how to delay this period. If we start a war right away, this planet will surely be destroyed by the aftermath of our battle. After all, those Zerg won't let us leave this planet." The others began to think about it, and Yuli spoke up, "I can protect this planet, but then I probably won't be able to participate in the battle." Pollux, upon hearing Yuli's words, said it was no problem. They just needed to hold on to this planet. The others nodded in agreement. Seeing their agreement, Yuli smiled and added, "I'd be watching from behind. If you get hurt, I can heal you." Lingqi, listening to Yuli's words, sighed, "Miss Yuli's abilities are truly useful." In the void, Huan Guang Cicada looked at the vibrant green planet and said with regret, "It's a shame to destroy it directly. It would be much better if we could dig out its core and present it to Her Majesty." Bai Guichan, overhearing Huan Guang Cicada's sigh through the mental link, emphasized, "Our goal is to kill all those who have overstepped their bounds. We don't necessarily need this planet for the core." Huan Guang Cicada smiled softly, agreeing with Bai Guichan. After all, in their eyes, the core was worth less than a single strand of Her Majesty's hair. He lifted his long hair from his ear, and a lavender mist drifted from him, converging into an immensely long river. The invisible power of laws intertwined with the mist, lending it a touch of mystery. The humanoid insect generals stood tall in the void, as tiny as grains of rice. But as their suppressed auras released, they began to rise steadily. With them as their center, an immense and overwhelming might instantly spread outwards into the surrounding void. Layer upon layer of pressure piled up, instantly bringing the people of this planet to a standstill. Their hearts began to beat rapidly. Unspeakable fear crawled through their hearts, like wisps of thread. The fear of not knowing when death would come was driving them mad. Even though the Wood clan general who had previously promised to protect them, when faced with this terrifying pressure, they still felt fear, terror, and even regret for coming here. At that moment, the 10 insect generals raised their hands simultaneously. Boom! 10 pillars of light shot towards the planet with devastating force. The layers of transparent protective shields seemed like thin sheets of paper. The destructive force that erupted in an instant seemed to shatter everything, annihilate it, and ultimately turn it into dust floating in the void. The beams of light intertwined and erupted in a dazzling display of color, like fireworks exploding in the night sky. The people on the planet simultaneously looked up at the dazzling light that filled the entire sky. It was so brilliant, so beautiful, it seemed as if fading into it wouldn't be so unbearable. Everyone closed their eyes, serenely accepting the inevitable death that was coming. Ding! It was like a pure white feather falling, lightly settling into the hearts of the people. The gentle and inclusive feeling was like sinking in warm water, the threads that had been entangled in their hearts being dissolved by this gentle, watery energy. Yuli Luo was in the sky, her snow-white hair fluttering, her eyes as bright as the sun reflecting the rainbow light in the sky. She put her hands together and prayed, "Bless you." As her voice fell, the pair of white wings behind her spread out, and the pure white domain spread out to wrap the entire planet. The vast power of rule spread out from her body, and the white domain turned into a pair of pure white wings. The wings stretched out for more than tens of thousands of meters, and they overlapped each other to protect the planet. The colorful rainbow light fell, like a drop of water falling on a calm lake, splashing layers of ripples. Until the end, the colorful rainbow light gradually dissipated, and it did not cause any harm to the planet. The pair of wings was like an extremely solid barrier, firmly protecting the people of this planet. Fei Yusen looked at this shocking scene, raised his hand to catch the feathers falling from the sky, and looked at the girl with eyes as hot as burning fire. Yuli opened her eyes and smiled at them, saying, "Everyone, I leave it to you from now on." Of course. Pollux was also stunned for a while, awakened by Yuli's voice, and quickly responded. Chao Guangxi looked at Yuli with great interest and said, "Miss Yuli, are you really not going to join the Sunwheel Empire? With your qualifications, you can directly become the Saint of the Seven Lords Hall." He was interrupted by Fei Yusen before he finished speaking. His emerald green eyes looked at the girl and said, "Ali will not join the Sunwheel Empire and be with you, Birdman. You guys go quickly." "You?" Chao Guangxi was choked by Fei Yusen's straightforward words, and finally could only glare at him angrily, and spread the 10 wings behind him to the sky. Seeing the two bickering, Ling Qi shook his head and looked at Yuli and said, "Miss Yuli, this planet is handed over to you." Pollux also nodded, and the two turned into 2 streams of light and rushed into the sky. When Fei Yusen saw that everyone had left and was about to say something else, Yuli spread her wings and came to his side. The girl showed a gorgeous smile. She opened her hands to embrace the man, and her golden eyes like honey lowered to look at Fei Yusen, saying, "I will watch you carefully this time." Fei Yusen's green pupils slightly dilated, and he was embarrassed by the girl's rare straight ball. He laughed softly. Although he knew that Ali's meaning was probably literal, he was still very happy. The sweet feeling kept bubbling out of his heart like a spring. Finally, he bent his eyes, half knelt solemnly, and kissed the girl's white and tender hand, saying, "It's my honor, Ali. Please look at me carefully." Yuli looked in the direction where Fei Yusen left. In the void, the 4 people launched their domains and fought with the Zerg. Various majestic rule forces fought and collided with each other, and the roar between the void continued. Emoyin fell on Yuli's shoulder and looked at the battle in the void with her. "Ali, are you worried about them?" Of course, although Fei Yusen and the others are very strong, those Zerg are not bad either, Yuli said with some worry in her expression. "Although it's just a delay of some time, we don't know how long it will take. Don't worry, they will definitely catch up." Emoyin comforted. After all, his clone knew that Ali was here and would definitely come as soon as possible. In the void, Fei Yusen showed a beautiful smile. He looked at the Zergs and said, "Ali is watching me this time, so I have to perform well." As soon as he finished speaking, 5 colored lights shone around him, and a huge peacock totem appeared behind him. It cried loudly, as if responding to Fei Yusen's words. It spread its wings that covered the sky and sun, and 5 colored light burst out from it, blocking the attacks of several Zergs. At the same time, Fei Yusen himself also unfolded an extremely sharp 5-colored folding fan, and killed a Zerg with long purple curly hair. He found that the ability of this Zerg was similar to his, both illusions. With a grim expression, Huan Guang Cricket dodged the blow aimed straight at his face. Purple Mist attacked Fei Yusen like a venomous snake, but the attack simply passed through the man. He narrowed his eyes and asked, "Illusion is your ability too?" Fei Yusen looked at him and said, "Of course, you're not the only one who can do this." He unfolded his folding fan and attacked Huan Guang Cricket again. In just a few breaths, they had exchanged hundreds of moves, with Fei Yusen steadily dominating Huan Guang Cricket. The others were shocked to see Fei Yusen's outburst directly pulling 4 Zergs. They didn't expect that this outburst would have such strength. Pollux guessed that it was probably Fei Yusen, who wanted to show off in front of Yuli, but she thought that Castor would probably come too, and her heart was agitated. She muttered, "I am also very strong, but I will not be compared with this peacock." She instantly opened her domain, which was an extremely vast blue sea. Pollux changed from human form back to the original mermaid. Her powerful tail swung in the seawater, and surging waves attacked the red-haired Zerg. As they fought, the void began to vibrate violently. The void ants continued to release their superpowers to stabilize the void. Otherwise, with the intensity of this person's war, I am afraid that the surrounding void would have been torn apart long ago. However, as the white ghost cicada and several insect generals opened their domains one after another, the originally fixed space began to tremble violently. The void ant's face was grim. These people had truly forgotten everything else when they were fighting. Just as the Allied Corps headquarters was embroiled in an intense battle, the 3 dispatches finally arrived and delivered a message for help. Chapter 128. Just as the Allied Corps headquarters was embroiled in intense fighting, the 3 dispatches finally arrived and delivered a call for help. The Starry Tree Territory, the Obsidian Empire, and the Sun Empire all received the news simultaneously. Castor's face darkened upon receiving the news, and she was filled with fear. If the teleportation array hadn't been established, it would likely take several days for the news to reach her. By then, the Allied Corps would likely be reduced to cosmic dust. Just as she was about to depart, Xian Yi, who was in charge of the Obsidian Empire, also received the news, or perhaps even earlier, from his main body. He immediately summoned several SSS-rank subordinates, and prepared to personally lead a force to support. On the Sun Empire's main star, a dazzling light fell upon the magnificent palace. A towering faceless statue stood in its center. A member of the Wood tribe hurriedly followed several members of the Wing tribe, each with multiple pairs of wings, as they finished their report. The several hall masters in the main hall of the empty mine fell silent for a moment. One of them, a burly man, said bluntly, "We were planning to go check on the Guangxi kid, but he's trapped inside, waiting for us to rescue him?" The others smiled at his words. Some even laughed out loud. A blonde Wing clan member said, "Well, we must rescue him if necessary, but I didn't expect the Zerg to deploy so many SSS-rank generals. And that's probably not even their full strength. After all, according to the news from the Wood clan, once their hive is moved here, the Zerg will likely be endless. This is really... Let's not talk about this. Who are you going to go?" Just as they were discussing, Yun Xiaozhu, who had been silent all the time, said, "I will lead the team this time." The scene fell into silence as he spoke. The burly Wing clan member just now looked at Yun Xiaozhu in surprise, and said, "You just came out of seclusion for decades and want to fight? This is not like you." After all, Yun Xiaozhu's personality has always been that he is not interested in anything. It is estimated that as long as there is no enemy coming to the door, Yun Xiaozhu can stay in his temple forever. Yun Xiaozhu didn't care about the strange looks of the 6 people, and turned around and walked out of the main hall, leaving a faint sentence, "Let's go." Several people just watched him leave, and finally it was the burly Wing clan member who reminded, "We just let him go alone? This is too unranked." The blonde Wing clan member supported his forehead. "Of course not, we will follow him." Finally, it was quickly decided that the other 2 hall masters would follow Yun Xiaozhu to rescue. On the other side, on the natural star where the Allied Corps was in command, the Wood clan general, who had commanded a group of people to hide underground, looked at the snow-white sky. Looking closely, he could see that the layer of protective shield was as white as the lake's surface where water drops kept falling, rippling continuously, and looked shaky, but still guarding the planet. A look of worry appeared on his face. Although he was not SSS level, he was also an SS level psychic. He could sense the various explosive energies that continuously bombarded the barrier. Unfortunately, he could not do anything now, and could only watch. After all, his psychic ability was only SS level, which was perfect, but unfortunately, he had not made a breakthrough, which meant that there was a gap between him and SSS level. In the end, he could only pray that reinforcements would arrive quickly. In the void, as time passed, Yuli's numerical disadvantage began to become increasingly apparent. Soon, several of them were injured by the Zerg siege. Yuli promptly provided medical treatment, but this caused the Zerg generals to focus their attacks on Yuli, entangled even when others tried to provide support. This action infuriated Fei Yusen, who fiercely attempted to rip the Phantom Cricket to pieces, only to be quickly diverted away by the Void Ants, who had been closely monitoring the situation. This action exposed the Void Ants to Fei Yusen and the others. Fei Yusen was filled with disdain for his actions, but his priority now was to deal with the other Zerg attacking Yuli's barrier. Yuli had been mentally prepared for these Zerg attacks. After all, she alone, deploying her domain to protect the planet, made her a natural target. Furthermore, she could heal. Who else could they attack? Surrounding her, the river of light formed by the convergence of the power of rules continued to spread, merging into the massive wings that protected the planet. As her power of rules continued to increase, the wings, once shaky and transparent, continued to firmly protect the planet. However, as her control over the power of rules continued to increase, her face gradually paled. Mo Yin, observing her face, said worriedly Ali. Mo Yin's meaning was clear, whether he needed to intervene. Yuli turned to look at Mo Yin, her bright eyes narrowing. "No, I can do it. Mo Yin, don't you trust me?" Mo Yin raised his eyes to meet the girl's eyes. The will in them was very firm and dazzling, which made him dazzled. His star, the star that belonged to him, was no longer so weak like a candle that was about to go out. She was now blooming with dazzling brilliance. Finally, Mo Yin nodded and sighed silently. "Of course, I always believed in Ali." "Yeah." Yuli smiled softly, closed her eyes, and continued to devote herself to the control of this majestic rule power. However, those insects in the void found that the light wings looked illusory and fragile, and every attack seemed to be about to break immediately. In fact, it was not the case at all. They had attacked many times, and the barrier was still as stable as Mount Tai. Bai Guichan looked a little ugly, and directly ordered these insects to attack one place to break the surface. In an instant, countless destructive and exploding light beams gathered from all directions. The white ghost cicada simultaneously expanded its domain, and the piercing cold power turned into a huge sharp spear. The wings attacked by those light beams had become transparent, and could see the scenery on the natural star. Yuli instantly felt that there was a gap in this place. Just as she controlled the power of rules to repair it, she seemed to sense something, and looked up at the snow-white spear with a terrifying destructive aura. The other 4 people also saw the sharp spear formed by the white ghost cicada, but unfortunately they were blocked by the space barrier of other zergs and void ants, and could only watch. Fei Yusin's emerald eyes were instantly stained with ink like black, and the wisps of black mist gathered on him. He roughly pulled down the zerg arm that blocked him, and blood splashed out. A few drops fell directly on his beautiful face, making him look like a demon in a painting. The void ant had long noticed that this man's fighting power was extraordinary, and directly moved in front of him to block his way and move his injured comrades away. Fei Yusin looked at this scene and smiled coldly. "Get out of the way." The void ant raised his eyebrows and said, "This won't work." Before he finished speaking, Fei Yusin picked up the folding fan and attacked him as fast as lightning. Just as the two were entangled, Yuli looked at the white-haired and white-eyed zerg holding up the spear and rushing towards the weakest point in her domain with an irresistible force. When Mo Yin raised his soft tentacles and the dark mist was about to rush out, Yuli raised her hand, and the power of the rules and the entire domain gathered towards her. This action made Mo Yin's attack pause, and he looked at the girl. However, the white ghost cicada noticed that she gathered the rules of the entire domain together, probably because she felt that she could not protect this planet, so she gathered all her strength to protect herself. He figured this out, and the spear rushed to the weakest point with an extremely fast attack, like a meteor falling from the void. Boom, boom, crack. At the moment when the spear hit it, the wings that embraced the planet suddenly broke into pieces, and Pollux and the others felt cold in their hearts when they saw this scene. After all, if this defense was broken, the planet would be in danger. But in the next moment, the rule power that gathered around Yuli like a white sun suddenly turned into a dark black without any warning, just like a constant stream of ink falling to dye this piece of white paper black, and those thousands of broken pieces were also intertwined again by the black silk thread. The planet, once enveloped by pure white wings, was instantly protected once again, though this time, it was no longer wings but layers of spiderwebs. The massive spear was entangled in these intricate, pitch-black threads, instantly enveloping it like a cocoon. White Ghost Cicada tried to call the spear back, only to find his connection to it severed. His pupilless, snow-white eyes turned to the girl floating in the void. Her pristine white garment underwent a dramatic transformation, transforming from a mysterious, inky black. Its dark gold patterns were resplendent and elegant, a faint, dark golden glow emanating from them. The hem of her garment shone with her movements, creating a dense, shimmering pattern, like a galaxy cascading down from the night sky. The snow-white tulle was now stained with a jet-black hue, and the sun-shaped earrings on her ears had been transformed into gold crescent-shaped earrings crafted from baroque black pearls and obsidian. Her originally holy and pure aura transformed into one of mystery and nobility. Although Bai Guichan didn't quite understand her transformation, he still affirmed, "It's you." Yuli looked up at him with a gentle smile, though it was tinged with defiance. Of course. The sharp spear, formed from Bai Guichan's power of rules, was quickly transformed into energy by the black threads, which devoured it completely. Bai Guichan instantly sensed the disappearance of his spear and frowned, speculating that this was his devouring ability. Even with this shift in power, as long as this planet existed, Yuli remained an obvious target. But at the same time, powerful and terrifying auras erupted from the planet, accompanied by the distant roars of dragons. Bai Guichan and the other insect generals engaged in the battle were stunned. How could reinforcements arrive? Even the Void Ant was shocked. How could his spatial domain be breached? Too bad he didn't have time to figure it out. Figures appeared in the void at a terrifying speed. There were the Holy Breathing Wing tribe, the huge dragons, and the delicate-looking wood tribe, who were competing against the Zerg tribe. The situation was reversed in an instant. Chapter 129. A massive, pure black dragon spread its massive wings and approached Yuli at lightning speed. With a powerful swipe of its tail, it enveloped the girl and slashed its sharp claws directly at the white ghost cicada. The sharp claws seemed capable of shattering the very void. Dang! The white ghost cicada condensed a snow-white spear to block the sudden attack. Unfortunately, the attack arrived too quickly. Even though the white ghost cicada managed to block most of the blow, it still left a deep gash on his arm, and blood flowed profusely. The black dragon's bloodshot eyes narrowed, and its claws began to press down. The next moment, Golden red flames struck the white ghost cicada from the other side, leaving him with nowhere to hide. Yuli looked toward the source of the flames, and saw Yun Xiaozhu descending into the void. His long silver hair cascaded over his shoulders, radiating a faint sheen. His golden eyes, unobstructed by his glasses, seemed to see through everything in the world, cold and profound. 12 golden and white wings spread wide behind him, and golden sun-shaped earrings on his snow-white ears shone dazzlingly in the light, like a descending god. He wore an intricate and ornate platinum gown, its patterns flowing in subtle patterns. Every detail exuded unparalleled nobility and majesty. His slender, powerful hands, clad in white leather gloves, held a platinum book. The pages silently turned, golden runes continuously emanated from the pages, and golden red flames surrounded him. As if noticing Yuli's gaze, Yun Xiaozhu's once sharp golden eyes softened. He smiled at Yuli, and then joined Xuanya in attacking the white ghost cicada. The burly winged clanman, Chao Guanyi, who had been following him, looked at Yun Xiaozhu with a look of surprise, his gaze flickering between Yuli and Yun Xiaozhu. Finally, when Yun Xiaozhu glanced at him, he withdrew his gaze from Yuli and joined the battle. With the arrival of these reinforcements, the battle began to turn in Yuli's favor. However, with the subsequent addition of the Void Ants, they were unable to inflict fatal damage on the Zerg. Whenever they could kill a Zerg, the Void Ants would use their spatial abilities to transport them away. Yuli also noticed this and frowned slightly. At this moment, Fei Yusen also came to Yuli's side. He had no injuries, only a few rips on his clothes. Fei Yusen asked, "Can all Li's previous spatial abilities control that Zerg using space?" Yuli pondered the question. The Space Mage suit's abilities allowed for various spatial manipulations, so controlling a person within a specific space was also possible. After figuring it out, Yuli nodded, "Yes, but he's at the same level as me, so I probably won't be able to hold on for long." Fei Yusen smiled at her affirmative answer, his enchanting face becoming even more alluring. "It won't take long, maybe 3 seconds?" "Sure." Fei Yusen narrowed his eyes, as he gazed at the constantly shifting Void Ants, communicating with Yun Xiaozhu through a telepathic link. Though the two didn't show anything, they were secretly observing the Void Ants' movements. Even their originally scattered attacks began to concentrate on one of the insect generals. That insect general was soon seriously injured under the suppression of the 3 people. When the Void Ant raised his hand to move the insect general away in this instant, Fei Yusen raised his hand, and a 5-colored divine light directly interrupted his action, constantly forcing the Void Ant to get closer to the seriously injured insect general. At that moment, golden ripples emanated from Yu Li's surroundings, enveloping her. A silver-white magic book, engraved with countless array patterns, floated in midair, with intricate circular patterns surrounding the book. The magic book began to automatically, without a breath of wind, help Yuli find the desired forbidden air spell. The slightly yellowed page rose, and a transparent magic circle, following the direction of Yuli's finger, transformed into chains, slicing through the air and pinning the Void Ant. Instantly, Fei Yusen's ornate folding fan unfolded, a ray of 5-colored divine light slashing towards the Void Ant's head. Xianyi swung his claws, and streams of black flames followed his attack, striking the Void Ant. Yun Xiaozhu's wings trembled slightly, and countless white feathers fell, blocking the simultaneous attacks of the white ghost cicada and its host of insect generals. The white ghost cicada's pupils suddenly widened. The snow-white, icy flowers surrounding it were blocked by Yun Xiaozhu's feathers before they could even reach the Void Ant. It could only watch helplessly as the Void Ant was attacked. At this moment, an invisible mental barrier appeared around the Void Ant, blocking Fei Yusen's razor-sharp attack and Xuanya's scorching flames. Everyone was stunned. Yuli, however, sensed the vast ocean of mental power protecting the Zerg. Almost subconsciously, she approached Xuanya and transformed into a Dark Lord. Black threads wrapped around the flames on Xuanya's claws. Xuanya instantly realized Yuli's intention and swung his dragon claws again, this time successfully breaking through the mental barrier and severely injuring the Void Ant. At this moment, facing the blood-soaked Void Ant, still struggling to break free from its chains, Yun Xiaozhu raised his hand, and a dazzling light fell like a huge sunset. Endless light and heat descended, erupting with terrifying power, directly killing the Void Ant. At this moment, Yuli, who had swallowed up that part of the terrifying spiritual power, seemed to feel something and shouted loudly, "Back off!" Xianyi, Yun Xiaozhu and the other 2 guessed something when they saw the spiritual power barrier, and Mo Yin also sensed something and looked up at the insect generals. When they quickly retreated a long distance, the others followed them tacitly. Sure enough, the next moment, Yuli felt the spiritual power of the insect generals gather together, like a terrifying spiritual tsunami rushing towards them. Yun Xiaoju and Yuli raised barriers in front of them at the same time, but when the attack rushed towards them, the barriers they built were easily broken. Yuli felt that her spiritual sea was a mess, and she even heard others screaming in pain, and the insect generals attacked them when they were in pain from the attack. Yuli pressed her head and forcibly controlled the black silk threads around her like a dense spider web to block their attacks. At this time, Mo Yin also raised his tentacles and pressed them against the girl's soft face. He looked at his 3 useless clones, and finally reluctantly extended another tentacle. A stream of dark mist roughly merged into the bodies of Yun Xiaoju and the other 3. Sure enough, after a while, the invisible spiritual power in Yun Xiaoju and the other's spiritual sea was swallowed up by the black mist. After swallowing, Yun Xiaoju and the others also returned to normal and began to block the fierce attacks of these insects. Unlike the rough treatment of his own clones, Mo Yin was extra careful when dealing with Yuli. "Ali, follow me." The wisps of black mist gathered in her spiritual sea, and with her spiritual power, she wrapped up the spiritual power that did not belong to her and swallowed it up bit by bit. Yuli slowly recovered. She seemed to have mastered the way to deal with this kind of spiritual power that did not belong to her by following Mo Yan's movements. Yuli looked at Fei Yusen and the other 2 with some doubts. Why did they look like they did not want to be hurt, but wanted to be pumped up? The 3 of them blocked the attacks of these insect generals. However, she quickly put this doubt aside and controlled her black silk thread to wrap up the people on their side, swallowing up those spiritual powers bit by bit. With Yuli's help, these people quickly recovered. The white ghost cicada's pupilless eyes looked at Yuli steadily, as if to remember her appearance firmly. Xuanya felt his sight, and the huge dragon head blocked the white ghost cicada's sight, and the scarlet vertical pupil met the white pupil of the white ghost cicada. Both the Zerg and the United Legion stopped, and finally the white ghost cicada withdrew his sight, and took the Zerg away quickly. The United Army watched them leave quietly. After seeing them disappear, they waited for a while, and breathed a sigh of relief. After all, the unknown mental attack just now directly wiped out their entire army. If they continued to fight, they would not have much advantage. Chao Guangxi rubbed his forehead, and thanked Yuli first. At the same time, he asked in confusion, what was that attack just now? How could it be so strong? This question was actually what they wanted to ask. After all, generally speaking, mental attacks of the same level would not cause much damage to them when they reached the SSS level. But the mental attack just now easily invaded their spiritual sea, stirring up their spiritual sea into a mess, leaving them with no ability to resist. Countless information flows in Lingqi's zero-shaped pupils, and he finally concluded, based on the Zerg's reaction to this mental attack, they are not surprised. It is speculated that this mental power should come from their superior, the Zerg Queen. As Lingqi's conclusion fell, others began to discuss. Is the Zerg Queen so powerful? The Zerg King is so powerful. What do we need these Zerg for? I have the Zerg King, whose ability is not strong. He is mainly responsible for the reproduction of the Zerg, but he is so strong. Yuli frowned as she listened to their discussion. The mental attack just now did not give her the feeling of an SSS level ability. It was like. Yuli could not remember what it was like for a while, and was surrounded by a group of people who expressed their gratitude. If it were not for Yuli, they would probably be seriously injured. When Yuli finished communicating with these SSS level psychics, the question just now had been forgotten by Yuli. Yun Xiaoju and the other 2 exchanged glances, but they did not speak out their speculations at this time. After all, if they really spoke out, it would probably be a big blow to their confidence. When Yuli and his group returned to this natural planet, they were also warmly welcomed by the joint army. The Queen of the Wood Tribe, Castor, also expressed her gratitude to the people from Obsidian and Sunwheel who came here, and at the same time presented them, and Yuli, the SSS level superpowers who were stationed here before, with a generous thank you gift. At the same time, as they returned to the natural planet, the other 4 superpowers also received the news. For a time, the demand for the construction of long-distance teleportation arrays increased sharply, and Yuli's wallet was bulging again. Chapter 130. After this battle, a group of SSS-level psychics stayed on this natural planet for a short time, and the construction of the teleportation array was accelerating. Yuli returned to her temporary residence. Yuli lay lazily on the soft sofa. Mo Yin turned into a pillow and let the girl rest on him. Yuli squinted sleepily. Mo Yin stretched out a tentacle and patted her back rhythmically. Yuli was amused by his actions. Mo Yin is so virtuous now. Mo Yin looked at the girl's face like a lotus, and was not angry at her teasing. He said, "Are you sleepy now, Ollie?" "Well, a little bit. It seems that I am a little sleepy after swallowing the spiritual power." Yuli buried her face in Mo Yan's soft body and muttered softly. Mo Yan's dark pupils swirled. Perhaps after consuming the Zerg Queen's spiritual energy, Yuli's own spiritual power had also begun to grow, so she needed sleep to adapt to this change. He continued to pat her back, whispering sleep. Yuli was too sleepy to open her eyes. She murmured, drowsy, and fell asleep. Mo Yan, however, felt that she would feel uncomfortable sleeping on the sofa the next day. A pitch-black mist dissipated from his body, easily lifting her up and floating to the edge of the bed. After carefully placing the girl down and covering her with a thin blanket beside her, he transformed into a small octopus and landed on her cheek, his soft tentacles clinging to her skin. He gazed at her quietly for a long moment before silently closing his eyes. On the other side, the personnel of the United Corps contacted the other 4 superpowers and began to share the abilities of these Zerg generals. They also reported the good news that they killed the Void Ant, and Yuli was successfully promoted to SSS level. And how the United Corps will deal with these Zergs in the future. After all, they have successfully killed 2 Zerg generals. When they killed the first one, the Zerg sent out 11 SSS level Zerg generals to destroy the entire United Corps. Now if they kill another one, the Zerg's revenge will probably be more serious. At the same time, these SSS level psychics, who participated in the war, also proposed that the terrifying mental attack came from the Zerg Queen. After leaving the Star Network after the meeting, Yun Xiaozhu frowned slightly. Seeing his appearance, Fei Yusin said, "If we don't tell them now that this mental attack is estimated to have exceeded the upper limit of the SSS level, telling them will do more harm than good. After all, even if we tell them, there is no way." Yun Xiaozhu glanced at him, and was indifferent to his instigation. Fei Yusin shrugged, his eyes wandering between Yun Xiaozhu and Xuanye, who was sitting on the other side, and asked, "What are you going to do?" After all, their current abilities are only SSS level, and they have no way to deal with attacks above SSS level, but asking for help from the main body is too embarrassing, and the main body's destructive ability, if it really takes action, it is estimated that the main body itself can destroy half of the star field without the Queen of Insects. The dragon tail behind Xuanye swung. He thought for a long time and finally spoke. His tone was very firm. "Ali." Fei Yusin tilted his head, and had not yet reacted. The emerald green gem earrings under his ears swayed slightly with his movements, emitting a dazzling light, reflecting his eyes. Yun Xiaozhu suddenly had an idea and said, "Ali's power of rules should be unaffected after the original body guides and merges." He paused, his expression grim, then skipped over the initial steps, and went straight to the conclusion. Ali should be able to break through to SSS level, which will give her a chance of victory against the Insect Queen. Fei Yusin listened to this proposal, her eyes widening slightly. Incredibly, she asked, "Are you serious? Otherwise? What can you do? We can only clones, unable to break through. As for other SSS level aspirants, it's basically impossible to break through in such a short time." Yun Xiaozhu looked at Fei Yusin and said. Yu Li, on the other hand, had a good understanding of Mo Yan's abilities. From the initial breakthrough to S level under his guidance, to the long-term presence of Mo Yan's black mist in her spiritual sea, and then to the moment when Mo Yan used the black mist to help Yuli absorb that spiritual energy, all these things proved that Yuli had a good understanding of Mo Yan's power of rules. After Fei Yusin understood this plan, his expression became as grim as Yun Xiaozhu's. Finally, he opened his mouth and uttered, "Why are you rewarding my original self?" He couldn't even imagine how ecstatic my original self would be upon learning this plan. Xuanye pressed his forehead and said, "We can't be sure yet. After all, Ali has only recently achieved her breakthrough. We have to wait until her abilities are fully developed." It was clear that Xuanye didn't want to discuss this topic at all. Fei Yusin's eyes shifted. "It's not impossible, after all. We can fuse." After saying this, the other two's expressions also became somewhat ambiguous. They didn't object to Fei Yusin's suggestion, but they kept it in mind. At the same time, White Ghost Cicada led a group of insect generals to evacuate back to the base they had built at 0 time. When they arrived in front of the already built insect nest, a graceful figure appeared in front of the insect nest that was floating in the colorful mist emitting from the crushed crystal cores of various supernatural powers. White Ghost Cicada and other insect generals knelt on one knee and saluted the figure together. Freya turned to the group of Zerg generals, looking guilty, unable to offer any harsh words. She said, "I will personally come here soon." At these words, the Zerg generals all expressed concern. White Ghost Cicada looked up at Freya, almost instinctively about to object, but was stopped by her. I know you all prioritize my safety, but this war is just like the previous one with the Rose Empire. If I want to conquer them all, I must be at the forefront. Phantom Cicada looked at the dreamily beautiful queen and said carefully, but your majesty, back then, the Zerg had just risen in power in the Rose Empire, and were not strong. Things are different now. Freya, upon hearing Phantom Cicada's words, did not object, but said, but I don't want you to rely on piling up deaths to secure victory for me again. The Zerg generals listened to Freya's words, a moment of silence falling. Finally, they agreed, waiting for the Zerg in the hive to hatch before the queen arrived, while gathering as much information as possible. Yuli felt that she had a particularly comfortable sleep, and was very refreshed. When she woke up, she opened her eyes, and found that her mental power had indeed broken through and reached the SSS level. Although she did not feel any changes in herself, she felt that her mental power seemed to be better, and she could perceive the subtle changes in the power of rules more clearly. Yuli was delighted, wishing she could devour more of that spiritual energy. Eating it would strengthen her. How blissful. Yuli was in a particularly good mood that day, so Yun Xiaozhu and the other two noticed it the moment they arrived. Fei Yusin raised an eyebrow, perhaps guessing why Yuli was so cheerful. However, seeing his original form clinging to the girl's shoulder, and recalling last night's proposal, his expression shifted for a moment. Mo Yin nestled obediently on Yuli's shoulder, meticulously managing his weight. It was a slight heft, but not uncomfortable, like a ball of light cotton. He was accustomed to the looks his clones gave him. After all, he had seen stranger things before. Whenever his original form came into contact with Yuli, their gazes would shift towards him, and Mo Yin had grown accustomed to it. It was this habit that caused Mo Yin to miss the clone's proposal. Otherwise, the pink octopus would likely have evolved directly into a braised octopus. Yun Xiaozhu and the other two separately explained yesterday's emergency meeting to Yuli. They also informed her that if such meetings were to occur in the future, she would need to log into the Star Network to participate. Yuli understood this. After all, her position had been promoted from regional commander to commander of the Joint Corps headquarters. Being a commander was essentially a deterrent. Unless an SSS-level insect invaded, there was little daily work to bother her. But the construction of this teleportation array is incredibly fast. Although Yuli had anticipated this, she was still somewhat surprised to hear from Yun Xiaozhu and the others how fiercely these factions were vying to build it. That's not too fast. After all, they know that with this teleportation array, powerful reinforcements like us can arrive at any time. Of course, they fight for it. After all, it could save their lives. Fei Yusin chuckled, supporting her head with one hand and holding a glass of mead in the other. Xuanyan nodded in agreement. And the materials for your array diagram, Yuli, are relatively common. Even small and medium-sized forces can gather them. Is that so? Yuli sighed. So the rule crystals they gave her earlier weren't a waste at all, Fei Yusin added with a smile. Speaking of rule crystals, Yuli remembered that she still had quite a few left, as well as the rewards Castor and Pollux had given her. If she absorbed them all, her abilities would likely increase significantly. The four of them chatted for a long time, and finally, Yuli watched as Chef Yun Xiaozhu, assisted by the other two, prepared a sumptuous and delicious lunch. Yuli was very satisfied with the meal, remarking that Yun Xiaozhu was indeed a manly mother. In the following months, the Zerg launched no attacks, and no Zerg were sighted. This made the Union Legion even more nervous. After all, given the previous incident, they repeatedly sent out various scouts to investigate the Zerg's location, even sending out an SSS-level Esper for reconnaissance, but unfortunately, nothing was found. Over the past few months, Yuli absorbed these rule crystals and other items that could enhance her Esper abilities, significantly increasing her Esper abilities. Also, during these months, she attended several Star Network meetings. Aside from the first two, which focused on improving the various systems of the Union Legion, the rest were dominated by various conflicts of interest. Yuli wasn't particularly interested, but watching them bicker was quite entertaining. It was in this tense and peaceful environment that Freya brought a group of newly hatched Zerg to the desolate planet surrounded by countless purple smoke where the white cicadas were. Chapter 131. Freya looked at the light purple smoke in the sky and asked, "Has the United Army sent people to detect it?" The phantom cricket stood not far from her, and his dreamy light purple eyes focused on Freya. Hearing her question, he nodded slightly and said, "Yes, the United Army has been sending reconnaissance teams to detect it in the past few months, but these people can detect this fog." Freya smiled brilliantly and praised him. "A Guang is still as reliable as ever." The phantom cricket blushed a little because of her straightforward praise, and did not dare to look into Freya's eyes. Instead, the other insect generals all cast their piercing eyes on the phantom cricket at the same time. If eyes could kill, the phantom cricket would have been riddled with holes long ago. However, the phantom cricket had long been accustomed to the gazes of his companions. After all, they did not dare to do anything in front of Her Majesty the Queen. Thinking this way, the phantom cricket was very satisfied and began to tell Freya about the news he had found out in the past few months. Freya looked at the light purple smoke in the sky and asked, "Has the United Legion sent people to detect it?" The phantom cricket stood not far from her, and his dreamy light purple eyes focused on Freya. Hearing her question, he nodded slightly and said, "Yes, the United Legion has been sending reconnaissance teams to detect it in the past few months, but these people can detect this fog." Freya smiled brightly and praised him. "A Guang is still as reliable as ever." The phantom cricket blushed a little because of her straightforward praise, and did not dare to look into Freya's eyes. Instead, the other insect generals all cast their piercing eyes on the phantom cricket at the same time. If eyes could kill, the phantom cricket would have been riddled with holes long ago. However, the phantom cricket had long been accustomed to the gazes of his companions. After all, they did not dare to do anything in front of Her Majesty the Queen. The phantom cricket was very satisfied with what he thought, and began to tell Freya about the news he had found out in the past few months. As Freya listened, she came to the insect nest placed in the center of the underground. She looked at the insects that hatched one after another from the pool emitting colorful halo, and nodded with satisfaction. She looked at the insect eggs that had not yet hatched in the water, her eyes full of love. Finally, she came to the humanoid insects standing in a row in front of her and smiled. "It seems that the number of my guards will increase again." These humanoid insects were hatched from the many SS-level supernatural crystal cores and earth cores that the phantom cricket brought back when it raided the Xingyu Tree Sea. They have grown from the SS level, just born to adulthood, and reached the SSS level. Freya thought about the various information that the phantom cricket had just reported, tapped her chin and said, "Long-distance teleportation array, this is not easy to deal with. If all the forces in this starfield build this kind of teleportation array, it means that the United Army can reinforce at any time, and in the case of the Void Ants being killed, such a teleportation array is very disadvantageous to them." Freya looked at the phantom cricket and said, "Can I know the location of these teleportation arrays?" The phantom cricket shook his head and said, "The United Army is still under construction, and we can only know the approximate location of some small and medium-sized forces." Freya didn't mind and said, "Then don't attack these forces first. Wait until they are built, and I will see what this teleportation array is." "Yes. Follow your instructions." The insect generals such as the white ghost cicada saluted Freya together. Although the United Legion had warned various small and medium-sized factions of the potential Zerg attack through various online meetings, each faction remained optimistic. After all, previous Zerg attacks had occurred within the Starry Sea, and their own defenses were not rigorous. This also led to the fact that when the densely packed Zergs on warships attacked these forces in groups, like dark clouds, they basically had no resistance. Even if some forces used defensive artifacts, this could only delay some time, and they were finally torn apart by the Zerg generals who led the team. After the white ghost cicada gave orders to the Zerg and killed all the creatures with supernatural crystal cores, it quickly came to the underground of this natural star, and found the center of the planet. There was a dark sphere floating in the center of the pool emitting a faint light. This was the core of the earth wrapped in a dark crust. Woo woo! He ignored the invisible wailing in his ears, and the white ice and snow fluttered down and froze all the creatures in the pool. He reached out and took out the core of the earth, and put it into the storage bracelet. As he moved, it was as if the planet was wailing heavily, and finally fell into silence and death. Then the lush plants, water, and soil on this natural planet all withered, dried up, and turned into dust. The residents living on this planet also faced these densely packed insects covering the sky like dark clouds, and had nowhere to escape. In the end, they could only be ruthlessly killed, and their hearts were pierced by the sharp insect blades to take out the crystal clear, dazzling supernatural crystal core. The screams and cries of the people were as helpless as the planet, and finally fell into silence. Finally, when the white ghost cicada left with the Earth's core and hundreds of thousands of supernatural crystal cores, the planet was left with only gray dust, broken buildings stained red, and twisted limbs. On this day, the Zerg sent out all their generals and other Zerg, annihilating more than half of the territories of these small and medium-sized forces. Some small forces were even directly destroyed. Even when the United Legion received the news and wanted to rescue them, it was too late. The Zerg's actions were too fast and too quick, which caught the United Legion off guard. After all, they had previously believed that the Zerg would continue to fight against the Starry Sea. The leaders of the 7 superpowers quickly convened a meeting and began organizing rescue efforts for these other forces. They also strengthened the defenses of their respective planets. The United Legion also organized its personnel, dividing them into small teams, each led by an SSS-level psychic, to support the various forces requesting assistance. Yuli also participated in this mission. She led a group of elite S-level and above troops on a warship, speeding to the mission site. Aboard the warship, Yuli looked at Gu Huji and Huang Fuwen with some surprise and asked, "Are you also participating in this mission?" "Yes, long time no see, Ollie. It's been a while since we joined the United Legion." Huang Fuwen greeted them with a smile. "Long time no see." Gu Huji also spoke, his cold eyes softening as he looked at her. "And congratulations on your breakthrough." Huang Fuwen, seeing Gu Huji interrupt him, tugged at the black leather collar around his neck with a hint of resignation and said, "Me too." "Congratulations, Yuli." "Thank you." Yuli smiled. Huang Fuwen looked at her and teased, "I'm so happy we're fighting together again." After all, facing Hiji's icy face every day in the United Army was so boring. Yuli laughed, looking at Gu Huji's expressionless face and nodding in agreement. "Command is up to you, Senior Huangfu. Leave it to me." Once their warship arrived at the battlefield, Huang Fuwen took command, directing their small force to support the small force. Yuli used her mental power to explore the dark and chaotic battlefield. She didn't see the Zerg generals. She guessed that the Zerg generals should be looking for the core of the earth. Yuli found a bottomless hole through her mental power exploration. She went deeper without hesitation. Yuli dived into an extremely empty underground cave. Woo! Invisible wailing rang in her ears. Yuli frowned and moved quickly towards the place where the wailing sound came from. Soon Yuli came to a cave. In the cave, clusters of light yellow crystals emitted a faint halo. In the center of the core of the earth stood a girl with long pink hair and delicate eyebrows. The rose-red dress she wore was like a delicate and beautiful rose. Yuli was stunned by her pointed ears. Meiko turned to look at Yuli with curved eyebrows and a very gentle tone. "I didn't expect that in addition to the earth core, I could also harvest an SSS-level supernatural crystal core. If I bring it back, His Majesty will definitely be very happy." As she spoke, petals of blood-red rose petals attacked her like blades, and the rich rose fragrance filled the entire cave. Yuli quickly retreated, golden stars twinkling, and the dark skirt fell down. The soft black gauze covered her light golden eyes, and the dark silk threads burst out with her as the center, interweaving and gathering into spider webs that instantly sealed the entire cave, and the falling petals were also captured and absorbed by the spider webs. Meiko's action to remove the earth core was also interrupted by the sharp spider silk. She frowned and looked at Yuli unhappily and said, "It seems that I still have to deal with you first." "Then give it a try." Yuli raised her hand, and the sharp silk thread rushed towards her. The two fought quickly. The black silk thread easily cut her skin, but soon the wounds healed in an instant. Yuli was a little surprised. It seemed that her ability was more healing, and her aggression was not as terrifying as the white ghost cicada she had encountered before. But perhaps because of her healing ability, she was particularly desperate in the real battle, almost using a fighting method of exchanging injuries for injuries. But probably because of Yuli's clothes, the Dark Lord's ability restrained her very much, and Yuli took her down without any injuries. Looking at Meiko, who was wrapped in black silk, and was about to explode with anger on her face, Yuli, who was about to ask some questions tentatively, could only kill her in the end. Yuli looked at the Zerg that had fallen to the ground, and was no longer breathing. Her eyes fell on the pointed ears, and she felt a little depressed for some reason. Does this mean that the crystal core in her body is from the Wood clan? Mo Yen answered Yuli's question, and his soft tentacles rubbed against her cheeks, probably to comfort the girl. Don't think too much. When this supernatural crystal core left her original owner, her owner had already died. Now it's just a Zerg. Well, I know. Yuli sighed. Although she had known for a long time that this was a method of the Zerg, she still couldn't accept it when she really saw it. Yuli finally put the corpse that had transformed into a Zerg into another storage bracelet, and at the same time sealed the cave and quickly returned to the ground. Chapter 132. After dealing with the Zerg general, Yuli returned to the surface and quickly cleared out the other Zerg. After healing the injured, she led her team to the next location. For the next few months, she continued to travel to various battlefields, acting as a firefighter. She also encountered more Zerg generals, who bore a striking resemblance to the Wood tribe. Through her battles with these Zerg, Yuli's understanding of the rules continued to improve. She became even more adept against the Zerg generals, and her almighty psychic abilities were fully demonstrated. She was able to fight off the ferocious Zerg generals head-on, and her healing abilities were impeccable. With a single flash of white light, she instantly healed the wounded from all factions. Nearly every faction that Yuli had rescued remembered her. Where else could one find such a capable SSS-level psychic, both combat and healing capable? This led to Yuli receiving more and more missions, and of course, she received gifts of gratitude from the various factions she supported, various seemingly strange items that, when used, enhanced their control over the power of the rules. This also led to a continuous increase in her level on her personal dashboard. Of course, judging by the battlefield situation over the past few months, aside from Yuli, who stood out, no one else had any way to counter the spiritual power that blessed the Zerg generals. Furthermore, the Zerg's inherent physical strength was superior to theirs, so SSS-level Aspirians generally had the upper hand against these Zerg generals. Very few were able to kill a Zerg general before that spiritual power was triggered. This resulted in a large number of these small and medium-sized forces being annihilated in the initial assault. Despite the subsequent rescue efforts of the United Legion, they proved ineffective. A large number of natural planets had their cores removed by the Zerg, turning them into Death Stars. This is equivalent to directly wiping out the homes of these small and medium-sized forces from the star map. I think it is because of the results of this raid that the Zerg basically began to attack various small and medium-sized forces in the next month, which also caused these forces to panic and began to migrate to the vicinity of the 7 superpowers on a large scale. As the Zerg accumulated advantages again and again, the number of tribes participating in the attack became larger and larger, like a golden mist of destruction in the starry sky. As long as this mist approaches, any person or planet will be swallowed up and annihilated. With the battles in the next few months, although many hidden strongmen joined in, keeping the high-end battle situation in a relatively stable stalemate stage, the Zerg continued to break through the defense line on the low-end battlefield, which also made their battle line continue to compress, while the Zerg on the other side was more and more numerous. Star Network. In the United Legion area, in the tall and magnificent floating buildings, people of various races were intertwined back and forth, and the big men with high power and authority gathered together to discuss the current situation of the war, and some of them were so fierce that they were about to fight. Among them was an SSS-level psychic from a medium-sized force. He was not in his own force because of something. But when he came back, the medium-sized force had been devoured by the Zerg, leaving only the dead and lifeless Death Star. He was very excited and attacked these Zerg generals crazily in the following months. Unfortunately, these Zerg were protected by the Queen and did not suffer any harm. Of course, there were many psychics like him in this meeting room. They gathered in the United Legion because the United Legion was their only hope to defeat the Zerg. As soon as Yuli logged onto the Star Network and arrived at the entrance of the magnificent building, a crowd of survivors gathered around, offering words of gratitude. Many of them, of course, were eager to ask if she could heal them. Finally, Su Ren, commander of the 5th Federation Legion, passed by, glimpsed Yuli, surrounded, and dragged her out, allowing Yuli to end the overly enthusiastic pleasantries. Yuli patted her chest with a lingering sense of trepidation. "Thank you, Captain Su. Otherwise, I might have had a long time to leave." Su Ren smiled and shook his head. "It's not a big deal, but their enthusiasm is understandable. After all, you've achieved so many great feats these past few months. Young people are truly remarkable." He sighed a little. After all, the last time he saw Yuli, she was still striving for the Star League. Now, in just a short while, she's already on par with him, a Legion commander, and even held a higher position. After all, such skilled healers are hard to come by. Yuli smiled a bit sheepishly at the compliment. The two of them hurried to the spacious conference room, where representatives from other factions had already arrived. Yuli settled into her seat, and looked towards Fei Yusen and the other two, each seated in their respective factions. Fei Yusen immediately noticed her gaze, and confidently gave the girl a wiki. He also messaged Yuli, saying he'd be waiting for him after the meeting. Yuli was captivated by his playful gesture, and subconsciously shifted her gaze to Yun Xiaozhu and Xuanye, who were seated relatively close to her due to the seating arrangement. Yun Xiaozhu raised his hand to adjust his gold-rimmed glasses, his usual gentle smile on his face. Xuanye stared at the girl expressionlessly, but a hint of grievance flickered in his dark red pupils, and the dragon tail behind him twitched unhappily. "Yuli, why am I suddenly sweating profusely?" Just as the three of them were arguing, Lingqi, a member of the mechanical royal court, arrived at the podium and expertly manipulated various screens to appear before the audience. Of course, a large screen also unfolded, displaying various data. Lingqi had organized it so that anyone familiar with the current war situation could understand it. It was shocking to see. Everyone frowned at the loss of territory and population. Although they had known the heavy losses, the direct display of these data far exceeded their expectations, which made the atmosphere at the beginning seem a bit heavy. After giving everyone a brief introduction on the screen, Lingqi said, "I believe you all understand the current state of the battle. The longer it drags on, the more disadvantageous it becomes for us. Of course, to break the impasse, we must either break through the Insect King's mental barrier, or kill them before they activate it. That's true, but the reality is that this is difficult to achieve." A member of the Tiger tribe grumbled from the audience. "Yes, otherwise, how could the situation be like this now?" As he finished speaking, the others echoed, explaining that this was the reason for the current stalemate. Lingqi nodded in agreement, then continued, "I believe everyone here has likely come into contact with that mental power in recent days." "Is it really considered as contact? Did Lord Lingqi specifically mention any new discoveries?" Lingqi looked at the audience, who gradually quieted down. Thinking of the news he received from Riluan and Heiyao, he felt that the core parts in his chest that rotated according to the established rules were a little faster. He closed his eyes and said solemnly, "Since you have contacted that spiritual power, you should have guessed that this spiritual power. It is better to say that it is the power of rules than the spiritual power, and this kind of rule power should be more advanced than the rule power mastered by our current SSS level psychics." Ah! The audience. The SSS level psychics were stunned when they heard his conclusion. Yuli opened her mouth. "Doesn't this mean that the SSS level is not the limit? Sir Lingqi, are you talking about speculation or?" According to the clues provided to us by the Black Empire and the Sun Empire, thousands of years ago, this star field recorded the legends of various gods. After that, this prosperous star field ushered in the insect swarm that covered the sky. The gods and the Insect King fought each other. Finally, the entire star field fell into a dark and annihilated state. The gods and the Insect King were buried together in the black tide that engulfed the star field. Lingqi faced their surprise and confusion and stated calmly, "But this can only be regarded as a legend of thousands of years. This can't be taken seriously." The SSS psychic from a medium-sized force was about to refute, but he thought of the suffocating feeling of nowhere to escape from the terrifying mental power when he was fighting before, and he lowered his voice and said hesitantly, "I know you are all surprised, but we have overturned many ideas, leaving only this most unlikely one. However, the performance of the Zerg on the battlefield is also constantly proving to us that these myths and legends may not be fantasies of the people at that time, but reality," Lingqi said, as he looked at the two forces of Highway Fjord and Wanshou Hall. According to his calculations, such records must be not only in Heiyao Riluan and Heiyao Riluan. Highway Fjord's residence is in the deep sea for thousands of years. There must be records like this, and the same is true for Wanshou Hall. As he guessed, the two forces saw that Yao Rilun had given the news, and they no longer hid it, and both affirmed Ling Qi's conclusion. The SSS level superpower of the medium-sized force saw that the 7 super forces had expressed their opinions one after another, and knew that the parties had probably guessed before, but it was not easy to say it out loud, which would be a big blow to the morale of each force. However, now the war situation has been deadlocked, and they are increasingly showing a decline, so they can only announce this news. He supported his forehead. Even if this news is announced now, it will be useless. Not necessarily. He suddenly raised his head and looked expectantly at the older generation of the 7 forces, who were extremely powerful and had titles such as Dinghai Shenzhen. A kind-looking middle-aged man from the Yunshan Federation shook his head slightly in the expectant eyes of everyone and said, "Although we now know that there is a rank called God above the SSS level, it is unlikely that I can break through in a short time. After all, how to break through is unknown." Just when everyone was disappointed, Lingqi raised his hand to signal everyone to focus their attention on him. Regarding how to break through, there are some records in the Sun Wheel and the Obsidian Empire. You can take a look. Oh! There are such records. The other 5 superpowers looked at the Sun Wheel and the Obsidian countries with a wrong look in their eyes for a moment, as if to say that you were too good at hiding. The people from the Obsidian and the Sun Wheel kept smiling, and they were also confused in their hearts. Did we have such records before? Yun Xiuzhu, who actually provided these records. Chapter 133. After everyone finished reading, people like the kind-looking, middle-aged man from the Tongjianshan Federation nodded slightly, indicating that this was the case. For example, for an SSS-level Esper, reaching this level typically requires mastering the power of one's own rules, while breaking through the SSS level requires creating a law. The difference is truly profound. Except for these people, the others looked confused. Yuli felt more and more familiar with it. At the same time, the record of thousands of years that Ling Qi just talked about. The entire star field fell into a dark and annihilated state. The gods and the insect king were buried together in the black tide that engulfed the star field. She also felt very familiar, as if she had seen it with her own eyes. However, before she started to think, Ling Qi started to introduce again. Of course, now that we have confirmed that there is such a level, it is the news summarized from the battlefield these days. That is, the Zerg Queen has not appeared yet, but this also requires us to make the worst plan. What if the Queen appears on the battlefield one day? After everyone finished discussing, Ling Qi gave everyone a batch of space-sealing special objects that had been recently developed to see if these batches of strange objects could block the actions of these insect generals. Of course, the source of the space sealing in these strange objects also came from the drawings in Yuli's hand. She became rich again. After this meeting was over, Yuli took the strange objects in her hand and left the meeting room, summoned the Star Network assistant, and came to the place where she had agreed with Fei Yusen. The Dream Bar. When Yuli actually arrived at the place, she realized that she didn't seem to have told Yun Xiaozhu and the others. Thinking about the look the two of them had given her before the meeting, Yuli trembled, and quickly sent them a message to make up for it, and made an appointment with them to meet at the Dream Bar. Elsewhere, Yun Xiaozhu and Xuanya, who were taunting Fei Yusen, simultaneously received messages from Yuli. Xuanya raised an eyebrow and said, "Is this what you said about Ali asking you out? Why didn't she send you a message?" "Ha!" Fei Yusen, successfully choking, scoffed, but he didn't receive any message from Yuli. Finally, Yuli saw Fei Yusen, furious as a pufferfish, and two broad-shouldered, long-legged men firmly blocking the pufferfish. "Yuli, little boy, you have a lot of questions, don't you? So why are you so angry?" She poked the sulking peacock spirit helplessly. Fei Yusen looked into the girl's clear eyes, which were filled with deep confusion about him. The enchanting man leaned directly onto her shoulder and said aggrievedly, "Ali, why didn't you send a message to me? You only sent it to the two of them." He wore a variety of blue and green gemstone bracelets, and pointed his knuckle-jointed fingers at Yun Xiaozhu, who was expertly handing Yuli juice, and Xuanya, who sat quietly on the other side of the girl, his tail wrapped around his wrist, and began to complain. Yuli blinked. Didn't you message me earlier? We're meeting at the Dream Bar." Yun Xiaozhu was amused by her matter-of-fact tone, and said to Yuli, "Don't pay too much attention to him. He always seems off for a few days. Hey, when applying eye drops, please don't forget that the person involved is present." Fei Yusen glared sharply at Yun Xiaozhu, who smiled gently. While the Allied Legion was discussing the battle situation, the Zerg were also adjusting their arrangements. They also quickly noticed Yuli's outstanding performance. Among them, the White Ghost Cicada reported to His Majesty that Yuli was able to devour the spiritual energy left by the Queen to protect them. Freya was very interested when she heard the report from Bai Guichan, and asked, "Do you have her detailed information?" The Phantom Cricket on the other side handed the light screen that had been prepared long ago to Freya. She looked at it bit by bit, and her white fingers slid across the light screen, and found that she had accidentally stopped the actions of Phantom Cricket and Bai Guichan several times, which was really interesting. And from the information, it seems that she has a wide range of superpowers. She showed a brilliant smile. Her superpowers are amazing, aren't they? How great it would be if such a person could become one of us. Phantom Cricket heard the meaning of the string, bent down slightly, and said with his white and slender hands pressed against his chest, "Your Majesty's trust will not be let down." "Well, I am looking forward to it." After chatting for a while, Yuli, Yun Xiaozhu, and the other two left the Star Network and returned to the battleship where she was. When Mo Yin saw Yuli coming back, he immediately came up to her and rubbed against her. Yuli hugged him in her arms and rubbed him. Mo Yin raised his soft tentacles and gently placed them around the girl's temples to massage her. "Ali, you should take a rest recently." The deep and magnetic male voice echoed in her spiritual sea. His voice was like a silky cello flowing out a moving timbre, and at the same time gave people a stable sense of security and agileness that wanted to drown people. Yuli listened to his voice, and her heart was like being gently scratched by a feather, itching. "I know, it's not that I have been fighting for the past few months, I'm a little too busy." And she also knew that these tasks were urgent, and if she arrived earlier, more people would be rescued, which also made her basically not stop to rest for the past few months, and even this meeting was attended while she was on the road. Yuli tugged at her slightly curly hair, pulled the suspended light screen closer, and took a closer look. Her next rescue mission was to rescue the mid-level faction, Liuding, which was currently under attack. Liuding was a faction affiliated with the Yunqian Federation. Its inhabitants' abilities tended towards the water ice system. The area within Liuding produced a treasure called raindrop pearls, which were effective for both ability enhancement and healing. So, the reward for this mission included 5 SSS-grade raindrop pearls from Liuding. Of course, there were other specialties, but in terms of rarity, these 5 were the most valuable. It's said that Liuding's planet experiences showers of varying efficacy each year, depending on the season. It used to be a popular tourist destination, but unfortunately, she probably wouldn't be able to see them now, and she was prepared for many of Liuding's planets to be completely destroyed. Yuli muttered, a look of dejection on her face. It was clear that the news link she had dropped during the meeting had somewhat devastated Yuli. Yuli had even asked Fei Yusen and the others if they were confident of a breakthrough, but the answer was no. Although their expressions were strange at the time, a complex mix of emotions, like a loved one running away with someone else and feeling powerless, they also assured her not to worry, saying the most important thing now was to improve herself. While she didn't know why they were so certain, Yuli trusted them based on her understanding and didn't ask further questions. Mo Yin, noticing her dejected expression, extended more of his tentacles, as if to comfort her. After venting her emotions by humming and humming, Yuli found herself burying herself in his soft, cloud-like body. As she vented her emotions, she saw that Mo Yin, as always, gazed at her with those round, inky eyes, yet filled with infinite tenderness, while his tentacles rhythmically beat. This made her feel a little embarrassed. Yuli sat up and hugged the pillow-sized Mo Yin in her arms. She smoothed down her messy hair and explained seriously, I was just a little emotional just now. I'm not usually like this. Mo Yin looked at the girl's reddened ears, his tentacles unconsciously bending inward. He said, I know. But that was really, really cute. So cute that he wanted to transform into his original form and wrap her up completely, tightly entwining them. Unfortunately, after merging with his 3 clones, he knew that such words couldn't be said directly. Mo Yin, adapting to the girl's wishes, changed the subject and chatted for a while, then let her rest briefly. After all, once the starship arrived, Yuli would be busy again. Mo Yin looked at the sleeping girl and expertly and virtuously tucked the blanket over her. He then set up a barrier to block out the noise, and tucked himself into her arms. After completing this, he began to reflect on what Yuli had told him about the Zerg Queen and his troublesome clones. From what Yuli had revealed, the Zerg Queen must have created her own unique rules. Now, these forces wanted to defeat her by creating a being of her own rank. In short, it was about creating a god, but this wasn't something that could be accomplished simply by talking about it. Furthermore, since the birth of him, the symbol of annihilation, no god had appeared in this star region. Creating a god in such a short time was simply a fantasy, but he thought of his clones. They probably had an idea, though he didn't know what it was. But these were all him, and if they truly wanted to create a god, Ali would be the choice. As he pondered this, a possibility suddenly occurred to him. His round eyes widened slightly, and he froze for a long moment. Then bang! Suddenly, the entire pink octopus turned red and began to emit steam. Fortunately, this was only an exaggeration. Mo Yin was still controlling his body temperature, maintaining a comfortable warmth, so as not to cause discomfort to the girl holding him. Even though his 8 tentacles tugged at his head, trying hard to control it, he couldn't stop the turbulent emotions within him. Alas, it didn't work. Mo Yin remained like a kettle for a long, long time before slowly returning to normal. Thinking that his clones probably already knew this method, but had tacitly concealed it from him, Mo Yin sneered. Just as he was about to raise his tentacles to send a message to his clones, he stopped and looked into the void. He saw 5 insect generals appear in the starry sky not far from the starship. It was obvious that their target was this starship, or rather, Yuli within it. Mo Yan's adorable octopus twisted momentarily upon realizing this, the black mist emanating from him like a roaring beast. However, he knew his destructive power, so he quickly suppressed this explosive emotion while stabilizing his disguise. After all, Ali loved his current form, so he couldn't ruin it. Finally, Mo Yin glanced at the screen, reluctantly raising a tentacle to send a message to his clone and simultaneously awaken the sleeping girl to inform her of her current situation. Yuli, upon waking up to be suddenly informed that she was under Zerg attack, said, Huh? Chapter 134. Yuli had a headache and said, There are too many SSS-level Zerg generals. They sent out so many Zerg generals just for me. Ali is very important. Mo Yin said frankly, after all, she is the only SSS-level superpower in the entire United Army who can fight and heal, and she can also absorb that spiritual power. Well, What should we do now? Yuli was a little confused. After all, it was okay to fight against 2 or 3 Zerg generals, but now there are 5, and she also saw a very familiar leader, the Snow White Zerg general. But it seemed too late to run with the starship now. Yuli became a little nervous. Mo Yin said at this time, I will inform Yun Xiaozhu and others, don't worry, they will be here soon. That's good. Yuli was relieved to hear Mo Yin say this. It must be said that knowing that they are back, Yuli felt much more at ease. But she also realized that if a fight really broke out, she might be fine, but this starship would be in big trouble. Thinking of this, Yuli began to search for the defensive items in her storage bracelet. She took them out one by one and started to protect the starship one by one. At the same time, she notified Huang Fuwen and others, telling them that these insect generals had arrived, and they needed to guard the starship and evacuate at the same time. After reporting the current situation to the Joint Corps headquarters, Yuli changed her clothes. The pure white silk long skirt swayed layer by layer of waves, and the long snow-like gauze fell to cover the girl's pearly and jade-like face, just like a warm pearl covered with a layer of gauze, adding a touch of confusion. On the other side, the white ghost cicada standing in the vast sea of stars frowned slightly, as he looked at the sea of stars that were not sealed off. He felt very sorry for the death of the void ant. After all, his death made their actions far less smooth than before. Even though they had invested a lot of the earth core and energy crystal cores they had obtained, they still hadn't produced another SSS-level insect general of the space department. His pupilless white eyes gazed at the massive warship. His powerful hand lifted a snow-white long sword, formed from the concentrated power of laws. He raised his hand and struck with all his might. Bang! A tremendous roar erupted from his hand, and the snow-white sword light shone like a white sun across the starry sea. This incredibly cold and silent sword light swooped down upon the warship, bringing with it countless void storms. The men aboard the warship had yet to receive any notification of the insect general's attack before they were illuminated by the dazzling sword light. They felt the gray starry sky suddenly brighten. Before they could fully grasp the situation, a bone-deep chill gripped their bodies like giant snakes, causing their hearts to freeze in an instant. Dang! Just as the sword light, which had pierced the sky, descended, a circular barrier adorned with countless golden runes enveloped the entire warship, blocking the terrifying blow. Seeing this protective shield appear, the white ghost cicada had a bad feeling. The other insect generals were somewhat surprised at the barrier that tightly wrapped the warship. An insect general with long hair like blazing fire raised his eyebrows and said impatiently, "This is really well protected. The superpower that your majesty wants is not planning to hide in this barrier forever." As soon as he finished speaking, Yuli appeared above the sea of stars, and she raised the exquisite lamp in her hand. The pure white light spread from the lamp, extremely soft, but extremely powerful. The moment the light appeared, it drove away the biting cold left by the sword energy, and the soft light fell on the insect generals, which produced an extremely strong sense of expulsion. This feeling made them very uncomfortable, as if they were disgusted by the starry sky, and they could not exert their strength. Smash that lamp first. The white ghost cicada gave a direct order. Several insect generals used their own abilities to come to Yuli in an instant, and attacks of different colors rushed towards Yuli at this moment. Yuli did not fight these Zergs head-on, and directly activated the space formation on her body to transfer. At the same time, Yuli kept changing her various clothes, blazing flames, calm water waves, pink blades. Different abilities were fully displayed in her hands, and the invisible power of rules bloomed in colorful colors in her hands, as if to illuminate the entire sea of stars. It was because of her changeable abilities that the 5 insect generals could not take her down in a short time. At the same time, Bai Guichan's bad premonition became stronger and stronger. It was because of this premonition that his attacks became more and more powerful. Unfortunately, just as he had expected, a stargate suddenly appeared in the void in the next moment. Yun Xiaozhu and the other 2 arrived in time. Fei Yusen immediately looked for Yu Li's figure in the battlefield, and instantly saw a girl in a retro and gorgeous dress holding a magic book with dense runes floating in her hand appear beside him. Obviously, this was the ability of space teleportation. Xuanya's dark red vertical pupils stared at the girl, as if to make sure if she was injured. Yun Xiaozhu immediately fought back against the white ghost cicada that attacked this side. The white and gold flames burst out in an instant, and circles of heat waves continued to spread around. These flame waves were like ripples of water drops falling on the lake, stirring in the gray starry sky. The flames rushed towards the sword energy of the white ghost cicada at an astonishing speed, like meteors. Boom, boom, boom. The 2 kept colliding and exploded into dazzling fireworks in the starry sky. Yuli looked at Yun Xiaozhu who was blocking her, and her heart was stable. She looked at Fei Yusen and the two who were looking at her worriedly and said, "I am not injured, you came in time." "Of course, but it would be better if we were faster." Fei Yusen's eyes fell on the girl with sweat on her forehead. He could see that Yu Li's superpowers had been severely consumed. Xuanya also noticed this and frowned, but his tone was still gentle. "Leave it to us next." They said a few simple words and joined the battlefield one after another. The black dragon that covered the sky and the colorful peacock totem appeared in the void one after another. They joined the battlefield with an extremely strong attitude. Yun Xiaozhu saw the two of them joining and stopped defending. 12 pairs of golden and white wings spread out, and endless white feathers attacked the white ghost cicada like sharp blades that could cut through space. For a while, the 5 insect generals were beaten very badly, and at the same time, the 3 of them were very tacit, and killed 1 insect general at an extremely fast speed before the insect generals could react. The Zerg general was ruthlessly killed before he could even call upon the protective spiritual power of the Zerg emperor. This sudden death also made the remaining 4 Zerg generals cautious. White Ghost Cicada had already realized the troublesome nature of their combined forces during the previous months of war. Just as he was about to retreat, the spiritual power within his mind suddenly vibrated. Buzz! An illusory figure suddenly appeared on the battlefield. For a moment, everyone present paused their attacks. Yuli looked at the phantom with alarm, while the Zerg were fervently enthusiastic. It was obvious that the phantom was the Zerg queen. Yuli looked warily at the figure constructed from spiritual power, and Mo Yin, who was standing beside her, also raised his eyes. After Freya's body had successfully condensed, she looked at Yuli with a dazzling and alluring smile. She bowed politely, not like the queen ruling the entire Zerg race, but like an elegant and charming lady, her whole body brimming with alluring aura. "Nice to meet you, everyone." Yun Xiaozhu pulled Yuli behind him. His cold golden eyes glared at Freya, saying, "The Insect King has appeared here because your subordinates can't defeat him. Are you prepared to take on the enemy yourself?" Freya wasn't angry at Yun Xiaozhu's aggressive words, but the insect generals behind her glared at him. Freya's gaze fell on Yun Xiaozhu, Fei Yusen, and Xuanya. Her dreamy, misty eyes narrowed slightly. She tilted her head in confusion, a little bewildered. "Are you, or should I say you, truly human?" "Yuli, huh? What kind of a strange question is that?" Yuli was perplexed by the question posed by the Insect King during their first meeting. Fei Yusen twitched his lips, and the peacock totem with its resplendent feathers behind him raised its wings. "This matter doesn't require the Insect King's concern. Let's fight." Freya didn't react to Fei Yusen's blunt declaration of war. Her gaze remained fixed on Yuli, and the insect generals behind her also assumed attacking stances. The actions of both sides heightened the tension. Freya looked at the serious Yuli and said, "Your abilities are quite interesting, and the rules within you seem quite unique. It's a shame. This doesn't belong to the insect race. It's a being to be wiped out and reborn." As soon as her soft and gentle voice fell, a surge of vast spiritual power erupted from her hands, and the insect generals surrounding her seized the opportunity to attack Yuli and the others. Boom! That spiritual force was formless, yet profoundly powerful and immensely vast, like a stream of warm water, inviting one to relax, immerse oneself in it, and sink into this boundless, warm ocean. Yuli's mind was instantly captivated by the boundless spiritual power. She instinctively raised her hand to attack it. The next moment, just as Mo Yin was about to release his small octopus form, a mechanical voice echoed in her mind. "Host, seal her." As the mechanical voice rang out, a dazzling golden light erupted from Yuli's palm. The blinding golden light transformed into chains that rushed towards the surging spiritual power. Countless chains, like fleeting golden flowers, encircled and sealed Freya's spiritual power. Freya's eyes widened slightly at this scene, a hint of surprise. She hadn't believed that an SSS-level cultivator could actually seal her spiritual power, but sadly, that was the reality. What a shame. But we meet again. As the immense mental attack unfolded, her condensed form began to dissipate, leaving her with no spare mental energy to carefully examine the source of this unfamiliar golden force. Chapter 135. As Freya's figure dissipated, the insect generals retreated immediately. Yun Xiaozhu and the other two rushed to the girl's side, without anyone stopping them. Yuli looked at the 3 people surrounding her, and held her forehead with her hand. "Let's get out of here first." "Okay." The 3 of them agreed, and since the warships had already been dispatched before the battle, Xuanya opened the space portal, and led them to the Obsidian Empire's palace. Yuli gazed at the vast golden nest and slowly asked, "Where are we?" Xuanya noticed Yuli's puzzled expression, and explained their current location. "A courtyard in the palace of the Obsidian Empire's main planet, Heyo Star, which also served as his residence. So this is your nest? Yuli's mouth widened slightly. The nest was made of pure gold. That's a lot of money. Yuli's eyes lit up. Xuanya observed the change in her expression, and his dark red pupils softened. He said, if you like it, I can give it to you. Haha, what's the use of such a large nest for Ollie? Even if it's for collection, it takes up too much space. Fei Yusen sneered from the other side, very unhappy that Xuanya had brought Ollie to his lair. Aren't you tired? Didn't you just have a fight? Yuli puffed out her cheeks. Seeing the girl's displeasure, the two immediately stopped arguing. Xuanya led the three of them out of the enormous nest and into a luxurious palace. All the way, black armored guards checked on their luggage. It was clear that the palace was heavily guarded. The horns and tails on their heads also caught the girl's attention. So the people here are all dragons? Yuli asked curiously. Yes, they are all black dragons. Xianyi nodded, and seeing that the girl's eyes were always lingering on their horns and tails, he added, if Ollie wants to see, I have them too. And they are bigger and harder than theirs. As soon as the voice fell, a black and shiny dragon tail wrapped around her wrist, and the tip of the tail even gently rubbed the skin on the inside of her wrist. Yuli reached out and touched his scales, which felt cool and a little nice to touch. Fei Yusen's eyes were almost blazing with anger as she looked at Xuanya's shameless tail. If she wanted to touch it, she would touch his tail. His tail is much more beautiful than this black tail. When the four of them arrived at this gorgeous palace, Yuli immediately aimed at the spacious sofa in the golden hall, which was covered with a very conspicuous snow-white plush blanket. She nestled in it directly, and her whole body relaxed, like a little kitten nestling in her own nest, looking very cute. The three of them were happy to see her unconsciously relax in front of them. So after Yuli sat down, they sat around the girl. Yuli looked up and saw that they were sitting in familiar positions. Fei Yusen and Yun Xiaozhu occupied her left and right sides, and Xuanya was sitting in a single seat right in front of her very close. Yuli felt surrounded again. Forget it, she's used to it. Yuli threw away these strange thoughts and looked at them and asked, where is that battleship now? After all, before the battle began, she had instructed Huang Fu when to steer the warship away from the area where the humanoid scourge were fighting. However, Yuli and Huang Fu Wen had originally planned to sail in the opposite direction of Luoyu Court, fearing the Zerg might be lying in wait there, waiting for Huang Fu Wen and his men to collide with them and become a snack for them. Now that the battle was over, Yuli began to inquire about the warship's exact location. Losing contact would be disastrous. Fei Yusen casually pulled out a light screen, tapping it lightly with her delicate fingers a few times before showing it to Yuli. Yuli breathed a sigh of relief at the prominent green mark on the star map. It seemed they hadn't lost their way. Huang Fu Wen, perhaps realizing they might become a conspicuous target, steered the warship toward a debris belt filled with countless rubble. Fei Yusen looked at her and said, I've already sent a message to the warship. The Allied forces also received the news about the insect generals besieging you, Ollie. They'd be sending someone to retrieve the warship. Ollie, don't worry. That's good. Yuli breathed a sigh of relief at his words, but then her face wrinkled again as she recalled the insect emperor's words before they left. Will the queen come again? They had no way to stop her spiritual clones right now. But she knew Yun Xiaozhu, and the others had a solution. The girl, thinking this, glanced at the three of them and asked tentatively, what was that solution you mentioned earlier? Yun Xiaozhu, Fei Yusen, and Xuanya, Yuli tilted her head and looked at the three people, all looking glum. The atmosphere seemed to grow more tense. Is it a bad idea? You did the same thing before. Yuli looked at their changing expressions, and obviously thought wrongly. That's not the reason, Ollie. Yun Xiaozhu smiled bitterly. He would not let the girl think too much, so he quickly explained. When your ability is complete, Mo Yen can give you guidance. Yun Xiaozhu's words were very obscure, which caused Yuli to not think about it at all. She hugged the little octopus that fell on her head and said in a surprised tone, So Mo Yen is actually God? This doesn't seem like it. After all, if he wants to give her guidance, he must be a god himself. But she thought about her first meeting with Mo Yen before, and finally remembered the familiarity with the spiritual power of the Insect King. Yuli's spiritual power almost condensed into a thread to connect to the black mist that had been quietly staying in her spiritual sea. Mo Yen, who was in Yuli's arms, also raised his eyes at this time, and met the girl's eyes that were slightly rounded because of surprise, and the black mist gently wrapped around her spiritual power. Well, don't be afraid. Ollie, don't leave me. Or he. His voice is low and magnetic, like a silky cello, gentle and delicate, making people feel like they are trapped in the warm spring water, unconsciously wanting to sink into it. His soft tentacles were attached to Yuli's arms. Imogen slightly adjusted the angle and raised his round black eyes to make him look more lovely. Well, I'm not afraid, that's right, I'm just surprised. Yuli pinched Imogen's tentacles and said, after all, Imogen's current appearance as a pink little octopus didn't look like the omnipotent god recorded in those legends. But she thought of the black fog from their first meeting. If that dark fog, obscuring the sky and the sun, had dispersed, it would have been quite similar, though this was probably the evil god. After Yuli learned Imogen's identity, she almost immediately thought of Yunxiozhu and the other two's familiarity with him, and how she often felt they were the same person. She also thought of the insect emperor's ability to create multiple copies with a single mental effort. Her gaze instantly fell on Xuanya and the other two, and she opened her mouth. It was as if she had learned an incredibly shocking secret about them. Yuli panicked, wanting to be alone and calm down. Ah! The girl screamed silently inwardly, hastily looking away from them. Imogen, like an octopus, was entangled in her arms, his sweet scent lingering around him. But his attention wasn't there. His black mist was constantly connected to Yuli's spiritual energy, so he naturally heard the girl's silent inner cries and sensed her intense emotional fluctuations. He was momentarily at a loss, unsure how to comfort her. He could only look at Yunxiozhu and the other three, signaling with his eyes. Yunxiozhu sighed slightly at her ostrich-like demeanor, wanting to bury her head in the dirt. He then confirmed her hypothesis, saying, Ailey's thinking is correct. We're all one. After hearing Yunxiozhu's words, Yuli couldn't even play the ostrich anymore. With a certain sense of self-deprecation, she looked at the gentle Yunxiozhu, then at the demon-controlling Fei Yusen, and finally at the cold and domineering Xuanya, muttering, I don't want to know. You're not even alike. Your looks and personalities are different. Can I pretend I don't know? Fei Yusen was amused by her. The tall man approached her and curved his emerald eyes, saying, No, but if Ali is angry, you can do anything to me. I don't want to do that at all. Yuli quickly reached out and pushed him away, stood up like a nimble cat, changed her position, and sat on another single sofa. She asked after realizing it, if you are all Imogen's clones, why didn't you tell me? She got angry again after realizing this. Ali. Xianya's scarlet vertical pupils slightly enlarged, and he was a little helpless. If we told Ali at the beginning, Ali would probably run away. Yunxiozhu also looked at her, and even if we are clones, we hope that Ali can treat us as different people. Will your clones merge? Yuli was a little confused when she heard Yunxiozhu say this. Although she now knew that they were all Imogen's clones, she didn't know the specific situation at all. Okay, but we don't like it, Xuanya explained, and the dragon tail behind him swung. Obviously, they were very resistant to the fusion of both the clones and the original body. Unless the original body forced the fusion, they were separate and thought independently. Although we are all clones, our experiences and ways of thinking are different. Fei Yusen added. Is that so? After hearing their explanation, although Yuli felt strange, she was not as resistant as before. She looked at Imogen in her hand and finally said, So Imogen's original form is a ball of black mist. It's a bit strange. But it's acceptable. Yuli thought so, and kept pinching the tentacles of the pink little octopus in her hand. And she looked at the little octopus nestled in her arms, obediently letting her touch all over, and silently accompanying her. It really didn't feel real. Besides, do gods really exist? Even if she saw the existence of the Insect King, Yuli felt that maybe they were just stronger than the current SSS-level psychics. However, creating a rule that is unique to oneself is indeed very remarkable. After all, almost no one in the United Legion can do it now. Chapter 136. As the topic of their identities began to unfold, the three of them became more casual, and their attitude towards the girl became more cordial. So, by the time Yuli lay in bed, she was still a bit dazed. After all, the day had been filled with so many twists and turns. And the information she received was a bit overwhelming. Yuli's eyes snapped open, her gaze fixed on the ceiling relief. She seemed to have forgotten something crucial. Yunxiozhu had told her that the Insect King's spiritual power could normally only be neutralized by the power of a similarly divine being. So why had she sealed it then? System? Yuli recalled the system's activation tone at that moment and called out to it in her mind. Yes, dear host. Explain. The host carries the power of the laws of another world, and her status is so high that she can seal the power of the Insect King or that evil god. Is this my original world? Yes, host. Is that so? Yuli blinked, thinking of her previous world, and cautiously asked in her mind, "Can I still return to that world?" "Yes, but the host doesn't have that ability right now. Please keep trying." Hearing that she could actually go back, Yuli felt a mixture of excitement and nostalgia, but then she paused as she thought of Mo Yin and Yun Xiaoju. "Can Mo Yin and the others come with me too?" "Yes, host." After receiving a positive answer, Yuli relaxed. After all these years of being together, she had become inseparable from them. Thinking of this, the young girl turned over and hugged Mo Yin, who didn't even need to sleep, tightly muttering to herself, "Really?" She only now realized that Yun Xiaoju and the others had been boiling her like a frog in warm water from the beginning. If they had explained their identities to her from the beginning, she would have most likely distanced herself immediately. Mo Yin had been watching Yuli since she opened her eyes. He finally saw her rolling around on the soft bed, hugging him. Just as she was about to fall off the bed, Mo Yin reluctantly released a black mist and held the girl in his arms. Suddenly surrounded by the black mist, Yuli exclaimed, "I'm going to fall off." Mo Yin explained, about to retract the black mist, but was interrupted by Yuli. "What does Mo Yin's mist look like?" Mo Yin paused, his voice a little hoarse. "Isn't Ollie afraid?" "No, Mo Yin definitely won't hurt me, right?" Yuli narrowed her eyes, thinking of his constant cuteness. "Curious," she continued, "I want to see what you look like, okay? I'm not as fragile as I was back then." Mo Yin felt his core tremble at the girl's words. Finally, with a silent sigh, he said with endless tenderness and affection, "Okay." The little octopus nestled in her arms transformed into balls of pitch-black mist, gently embracing her. The mist carefully and lovingly rubbed against her exposed neck, wrists, and ankles. The mist felt light and cool against her skin, like silk woven from the finest threads. Yuli was completely engulfed in the mist, which enveloped the girl like a giant cocoon. "Ollie, Ollie." The man's deep, hoarse voice echoed endlessly within her mind, the simmering emotion within it like a blazing flame. As his words fell, the black mist, initially cautious and simple, became more intense and sticky. Her slender neck, wrists, and ankles seemed to be licked and sucked by the mist feverishly. Yuli felt a little uncomfortable and started to struggle, but unfortunately, she was completely in the fog. The omnipresent black fog suppressed her and made her unable to move. The girl's long eyelashes kept trembling. At the same time, a ball of black fog touched her soft lips, and her lips sank slightly. Yuli opened her mouth before she realized anything. This was like a signal. The fog was like a flexible tongue against the girl's soft tongue, tightly entangled together. As the fog and the girl entangled, the black fog that was originally uncontrollable became more crazy. The omnipresent black fog was like a wolfhound that had been hungry for a long time, and finally had a bite of delicious meat, biting it tightly in its mouth and never letting go. Mo Yan's sudden burst of intense emotions also affected his clones. The three people who had not slept received this resonance. The three people looked very ugly, and ran quickly to the room where Yuli was. The kiss between the black mist and the girl was more like swallowing an entanglement than a kiss. The mist licked her mouth and tongue wantonly, licking up all the liquid in her mouth, and then sucking her tongue repeatedly. Yuli almost drowned in this kiss. The tears in her eyes were like moist pearls, just sliding down her face, and were licked up by other black mists. The mist was like tentacles or fingers stroking her soft long hair, slightly red cheeks, and tender earlobes, constantly comforting the girl. The drowsy girl was suddenly awakened by the doorbell outside the room. Ding-ling-ling. Stop! Yuli struggled, and the black mist that was sticking to her body seemed to be awakened and regained its sanity. It no longer suppressed the girl's movements and let her quickly leave the range of the black mist. "Ollie, can I come in?" Yun Xiaoju's gentle voice sounded outside the door. Mo Yin was very upset to be interrupted by his clone, but he was also a little annoyed that he couldn't control himself and kissed the girl suddenly. Yuli almost subconsciously wanted to answer Yun Xiaoju, but unfortunately her voice had become a little hoarse, so she shut up. Mo Yin almost floated over to take a closer look at her when he heard her voice, but as soon as he approached, he was glared back by the girl's angry eyes. "Ollie, I'm sorry, I didn't control myself." Yuli didn't want to listen to his explanation at all, turned her head, took out a bottle of recovery potion from the storage bracelet on the cabinet, and drank it, and dragged Mo Yin, who consciously turned back into a little octopus to please her, to the door. When Yun Xiaoju was about to knock on the door again, he saw the door open a crack, and a pink octopus was thrown out mercilessly. Yuli's soft voice with a hint of hoarseness came. "He will sleep with you today." As soon as she finished speaking, the door clicked mercilessly, leaving Mo Yin and his three clones staring at each other. The three of them had excellent hearing, so they naturally heard the girl's overly hoarse voice just now. Everyone had guesses about this situation, which made them look unhappy. Fei Yusen said with a fake smile, "What did you do to be thrown out directly by Ali?" Xuanya was also cold all over. "What did you do?" Yun Xiaozhu pushed his gold-rimmed glasses, and his golden eyes stabbed at Mo Yin with an extremely sharp blade. "It's none of your business." Mo Yin also had a bad face for these clones who interrupted him, and replied coldly. But thinking back on his recent behavior, he had indeed been somewhat reckless. Yuli had simply thrown him out, clearly unwilling to hear her explanation. As his thoughts wandered, his tentacles curled up, knotting like a knot. As the three people and the octopus were conversing, inside the room, Yuli, stroking her reddened lips, lay stiffly on the bed, her heart beating rapidly. It was clear that Yuli hadn't expected that simply wanting to see Mo Yan's original appearance would lead to his current state. And she didn't seem to object, even somewhat delighted. Thinking of that lingering kiss, her cheeks flushed instantly. She rolled back and forth on the bed several times, finally unable to hold back, lost in thought and drifting off to sleep. The next day, Yuli woke up late. When she arrived in the living room, Yun Xiaozhu, the other two, and Mo Yin were working there. As she appeared, all four of them fixed their gazes on her. Yuli felt a little nervous being stared at, but remembering what happened last night, she couldn't help but glare at Mo Yin, who was hunched over at the table. Mo Yan's move to drift over and rub against her was frozen by the girl's gaze. Yun Xiaozhu looked at Yuli and asked gently, "Are you hungry, Li?" "Yeah." Yuli nodded, and allowed Yun Xiaozhu to lead her to the restaurant. Mo Yin, completely ignored, wilted like a flower. Afterward, Yuli ate with Fei Yusen and the others, leaving her no time to be alone with him. This prevented Mo Yin from saying anything to the girl. Yun Xiaozhu looked at the pitiful, huddled up original form, and curled his lips. Of course, he knew it was just to please Yuli. However, he returned his gaze to the girl. After observing her for half a day, he did not find any resistance from Yuli. He was a little happy. The emotions hidden in her golden eyes were like flowing honey. The girl who was drinking porridge looked up and met such a pair of eyes, and a small plate of crystal shrimp dumplings was handed to her. Well, it was the food she always liked. Yuli's face flushed at the thought. She pretended not to notice the intense emotion in those eyes, picked up a shrimp dumpling, and continued to eat her porridge. She already knew how Mo Yin felt about her from their kiss last night. And Yun Xiaozhu and the others were all Mo Yan's clones, so Mo Yin equals Yun Xiaozhu plus Fei Yusen plus Xuanya. As soon as the formula formed in her mind, her thoughts became tangled. Fei Yusen, holding a cup of soy milk, watched the girl's cheeks flush red, almost steaming from what she was thinking about. Fei Yusen saw the girl's face almost buried in her bowl, so he quickly pulled it out and said, "Ollie, you can't eat like this. Besides, Ollie, what are you thinking about? Your face is so red." His voice stretched out, a faint smile on his face, as he leaned over to the girl and asked, "You know it, yet you still ask?" Yuli couldn't help but glare at him. Fei Yusen didn't get angry at her glare, but smiled, her eyes curved. Under the gaze of the three men and the octopus, Yuli struggled to finish her breakfast. By the end, she was almost tempted to run away. However, after breakfast, Xuanya invited her to stroll through the gardens. Walking along the marble corridor, Yuli gazed curiously at the two bright moons in the night sky. Their soft light fell on the lush, vibrant purple pansy beds, casting a thin veil over them, making them appear even more dreamy and beautiful. Chapter 137. I remember that the national flower of the Obsidian Empire is the purple pansy, right? Yuli looked at the endless purple flowers, bent down and stretched out her fingers to touch the tender petals, and said uncertainly, "Yes." Xianyi came to her side. Yuli had not noticed before that the three of them were dressed very formally at this time. Xianyi was wearing a well-cut black suit, which perfectly showed his graceful and powerful body lines. The suit was embroidered with dark golden dragon patterns, which made his temperament more cold. The double spiral dragon horns on his head, and the thick dragon tail behind him added a bit of wildness to him. Moreover, the dragon tail and dragon horns were embellished with pansy pendants made of pale purple crystals, which complemented the gemstone sleeves on his suit cuffs, and emitted a charming glow under the soft moonlight. Yun Xiaozhu was wearing a black men's shirt with a white suit vest, and a light gold tie added a touch of color to him. Under his gold-rimmed glasses was a thin long chain, which swayed slightly with his movements, stirring people's hearts inadvertently. Fei Yusen was wearing a dark blue shirt, with a few buttons in front of the shirt unbuttoned, revealing a broad and full chest, which rose and fell with his breathing, and a blue-green gemstone necklace fell on it, which was particularly sexy. His messy long hair was tied up by a ribbon and hung on his shoulders, adding a bit of casualness to him. "What are you doing?" Yuli stood up and looked at them a little bit late. Yun Xiaoju's white wings spread out behind him to cover the scattered moonlight. The handsome man smiled gently, raised her left hand, kissed her nails, and said softly, "Ali, do you want me to be together and never separate again?" Fei Yusen leaned close to the girl's ear, his hot breath and the cool jewel earrings against her neck. His voice, slightly hoarse, beckoned, "Ali, don't even think of running away this time." Xuanye carefully took her other hand, cupping it. He lowered his head, his thick dragon horns resting against the back of her hand, his slender, powerful tail circling her wrist. It was like a solemn ceremony. The man's cold yet resolute voice rang out, "I am willing to share everything I have with you." "Are you willing, Ali?" Mo Yin also floated in front of the girl at this moment. His deep eyes fixed on her, filled with endless affection, and he whispered, "Ali, are you willing? Are you willing to be with him?" His star. This fragile yet shimmering star, nestled in his arms, belonged only to him. Yuli blinked. Faced with the sudden surge of intense emotion, she almost wanted to hide, to lower her eyes to avoid meeting his, those eyes filled with scorching passion. But she restrained herself. At that moment, she thought of every moment she had shared with him since she came into this world, and emotions she hadn't previously acknowledged welled up within her, happiness, joy, and affection. Yuli raised her eyes to meet Mo Yan's dark gaze, nodded slightly, and said seriously and cautiously, "Of course, I do. We want to be together forever." She couldn't help but smile brightly. She reached out and hugged Mo Yan tightly, nuzzling him tightly. Then she gave Yun Xiaoju and the other three a big hug. The three were delighted by the girl's sudden and warm approach. Unfortunately, their joy barely lasted a few seconds before they saw her run to the others, taking the initiative to steadily serve them, sharing the love equally. Yun Xiaoju, Fei Yusen, and Xuanye. Okay. The four of them, and the octopus stayed in this sea of flowers for a long time. After the girl calmed down, they asked, "So, were you expecting me to confess just now?" "Yes, Ali is really slow." Seeing that the girl had already agreed, Fei Yusen's actions naturally became even more bold. He practically held Yuli in his arms, his chin resting on her shoulder, his messy hair brushing against her cheek. "Well, not really," Yuli retorted subconsciously, but she accidentally broke the garland she was weaving. She froze as she looked at the scattered garland. Yun Xiaoju, standing nearby, deftly took her scattered wreath and began weaving it with his slender fingers. Soon, the once untidy wreath took shape in his hands. Yun Xiaoju then placed the purple pansy wreath on the girl's head, nodding with satisfaction. "It looks great." But I can't seem to get it right. I wanted to weave one for each of you." Yuli scratched her cheek in frustration. Elsewhere, Xuanye, having promised Yuli to transform back into her original form, lowered his dragon head. His crimson pupils watched the girl's every move. Hearing her words, he quickly soothed her, "Take your time. Don't rush." The tip of his much enlarged tail moved closer to the girl, as if to comfort her. Unfortunately, it was too large, and Yuli used it as a pillow. "If it doesn't work, you don't have to weave it." Fei Yusen, not really concerned about the wreath, tried to persuade her. "No. Okay, take your time." Yun Xiaoju was annoyed by Fei Yusen's constant clinging to the girl. He looked at Yuli, took her hand, and said, "Ali, start with a small wreath. I teach you." "Okay." By the time Yuli had made a wreath for each of them, it was already noon. Although it was noon, Yuli, gazing at the two bright moons in the sky, recalled the different customs of various nations she had learned. The Obsidian Empire used to work at night and rest during the day. This was contrary to the Yunshan Federation's routine. Yuli suspected this habit was related to the fact that the Obsidian Empire was populated primarily by dark creatures. Thinking this way, Yuli walked in front, holding Mo Yin in her arms. She didn't notice the three people behind her carefully placing the wreath in a treasure box, and then returning it to their storage bracelets. By the time they returned to the palace, news had arrived from the Allied forces. The warships had been repatriated, and Luo Yuding's mission had been completed by others. Also, perhaps due to the previous battle, the Zerg's strongest offensive had slowed considerably. Of course, this was also due to the new artifact, which could seal space and immobilize Zerg generals. The artifact's effectiveness, coupled with Yuli and his team's ability to repel the Zerg generals' attacks, had boosted the Allied forces' morale. "Is there another meeting this afternoon?" Yuli, responding to the inquiries from Huang Fuwen and the others, was curiously surprised by Yun Xiaoju and the others' discussion. Well, this meeting will probably be about the production of the artifact, as well as the rescue arrangements for smaller and medium-sized forces. Fei Yusen stroked his chin and explained to the girl with a smile. Adjustment? Yuli tilted her head. Yes, around the time you encountered the 5 Zerg generals, another SSS-level Esper sent to rescue them was betrayed by those in the rescue force, leading to his death. After this incident, the United Corps quickly launched an investigation and has now discovered that the rescue force had already defected to the Zerg. We've also received word that the core of that SSS-level Esper had been extracted and offered to the Zerg. Yuli was surprised and confused by Fei Yusen's information. Why would they do this? Didn't this force know the Zerg would devour them all? Ali, human thoughts are ever-changing. There are always some who don't even resist, kneeling before the enemy and begging for mercy. Fei Yusen said with a smile, but his tone was cold and dismissive. This matter has sparked much debate within the United Legion, so this meeting is about it. Yun Xiaozhu nodded slightly, agreeing with Fei Yusen's opinion. The meeting began quickly. The SSS-level Espers, who had already learned of this bombshell news, were all in a bad mood. After all, they couldn't produce Zerg generals as quickly as the Zerg. The United Legion, formed from numerous factions, didn't have nearly as many SSS-level Espers as the Zerg. Most of the rescue efforts were diligent, but then they were suddenly stabbed in the back by a sudden attack. More details revealed that the SSS-level Esper was killed because he had absorbed a thank-you gift from the faction, causing him to become poisoned. He remained conscious until his Esper core was extracted. This also made many SSS-level psychics suspicious and disgusted with the rescue. After all, most of the psychics came from the 7 superpowers. The general commanders of the 7 forces in the conference center felt a little tricky. After all, they were not sure which forces they arranged for rescue were deliberately luring them, or really needed rescue. Really? Such a terrible Zerg. How could anyone surrender? Isn't this just a reserve of food? Do they believe that the Zerg will not swallow them? One of the SSS-level psychics from a medium-sized force was almost angry to death. After all, his force was the first to receive rescue from the United Corps, but such a bad thing happened, which was an extremely strong blow to everyone's trust, which was extremely disadvantageous to their small and medium-sized forces. Yuli sat in her seat and listened to their discussion. Obviously, everyone had no solution to this matter, but the rescue must be done, otherwise the Zerg will become stronger and stronger, and when they have swallowed up all these large and small forces, their 7 major forces will probably not be able to escape. They still know this kind of relationship of lips and teeth. After a long discussion, the formation was adjusted, from the original 1 SSS-level psychic leading the team to 2 people, and the way of collecting rewards for small and medium-sized forces was changed. Although this matter was resolved, it was obviously a big blow to everyone. Yuli looked at her tasks, and was surprised to find that these were all healing tasks. Obviously, this time against those insect generals, the number of injured people on the United Legion side was also a lot. Of course, such an arrangement also knew the reason why Yuli was besieged before. In the end, Yuli did not raise any objections to these tasks. After the meeting, Yuli exited the Star Network and exchanged information with Yun Xiaozhu and the other 2. After finding that they were still in charge of various forces, she breathed a sigh of relief. Chapter 138. For a period of time thereafter, Yuli stayed at the United Corps headquarters, healing various injured psychics. She settled into a routine of healing during the day and cultivating her psychic abilities at night. Yun Xiaozhu and the other 3 also continuously gifted her with various rare treasures. Combined with the rewards from her own missions, her mastery of the power of rules rapidly improved. However, with the adjustments made to the various teams after the meeting, the team's initial disadvantage continued to widen. Simultaneously, the United Corps' internal investment in SSS-level psychics was increasing. After all, they didn't have anyone capable of going head-to-head with the Insect King, and simply maintaining the current intensity of the war was exhausting. Yuli had noticed the anxiety these people felt these days. During a break, she'd asked Mo Yin why he didn't take action, and Fei Yusen and the other 2 had also been very vocal in their opposition. Mo Yin extended a soft tentacle and wrapped it around her finger, the suction cups beneath it lovingly sucking at her skin. This was a normal part of Mo Yin's affection since they confirmed their relationship, and Yuli had gone from feeling strange at first to becoming accustomed to it. Because the rule I created is annihilation. Nirvana? Yuli chewed on the word, pinching the little octopus's cheek, and asked uncertainly, does this mean that if you take action, Mo Yin, you be the same as those Zerg? Will all those natural planets die in that instant? Is that so? Yuli pursed her lips, remembering a memory Mo Yin had shared with her before. That memory was indeed of a world of continuous desolation and death, and finally, the endless sea of stars was swamped in an endless black fog. She hadn't noticed back then. Yuli rubbed her forehead, but back then, she hadn't understood the rules at all. Then Mo Yin should refrain from intervening if possible. Well, I always be with you. I know. It's the same as before, but perhaps their relationship has grown closer. Before, Mo Yin would often keep the earrings small and silent, quietly treating them as mere earrings. Now, his presence is incredibly strong, his tentacles constantly pressing against the skin of her neck or other areas. Seeing she doesn't mind, he's been pushing it even further. Thinking of their morning and night kisses these days, she blushed. Tentacles are so convenient, after all, this must be the passionate love phase. Yuli thought uncertainly. The other three, excluded by Mo Yin, and never taking any further steps with Yuli, said, "Haha, is all Li's power about to reach perfection?" Mo Yin instantly grew to an enormous size, his vastly enlarged tentacles encircling her waist, allowing her to rest completely in his embrace. His other flexible tentacles cleverly pulled up the blanket, one wrapped around her wrist, and one gently patted her back. Some were so eager they even started fighting. Yuli, entangled so tightly she couldn't move, said, Is there a chance I'd rather sleep with Mo Yin in my arms?" Instead of being entangled like this, Mo Yin blinked his round eyes, locked eyes with Yuli for a few seconds, then obediently shrank back to pillow size. Yuli breathed a sigh of relief, raised her arms, and hugged him, whispering, "Then I sleep for half an hour. Remember to wake me when it's time. There are more injuries lately than ever." "Okay." Mo Yin watched the girl's long eyelashes fall, covering her bright eyes like stars, and responded softly. On the other side, in a room covered with various beautiful flowers and plants, Pollux was sitting in the only pool in the room. The scales on the azure fishtail were like bright sapphires, dazzling to the extreme. There was also a tail fin like a veil on the fishtail, which added an indescribable hazy beauty to her, making people unable to move their eyes away and want to reach out to touch the tail that was like a work of art. Castor came to the door, and his sight was unconsciously attracted for a moment. Finally, sitting in the pool with a very suitable water temperature, Pollux said stiffly, "Do the Wood Clan also need to soak in water?" "The Wood Clan does not need to soak in water, but soaking in a hot spring is also good." Castor was amused by her words, and his emerald green eyes, like a deep forest, curved into a crescent. "Tsk, okay." Pollux was dazzled by her smile, and reluctantly agreed, of course ignoring the swing of the fishtail, probably because he was not clear about his reluctance. "Pollux, what happened to the recent divination?" Castor asked in a low voice, bundling up his silky golden hair. Talking about business, Pollux became more serious. "The outcome of my divination is exactly what we want, but I can't see anything from the war reports from various places now." She told Castor the divination she got in great detail, and finally asked with some doubt, "And the divination said that light and vitality will fall to save this scarred world. Is this talking about the people of the Sun Empire, or you, the starry sea of trees?" Castor thought for a moment, quickly going over the SSS level abilities she knew of in both factions, then silently dismissing them. Suddenly, she thought of the girl who had healed her. "Perhaps she's not from either of these factions," Castor said, sharing her speculation. "Yuli? Isn't that too fast? I remember she only recently achieved a breakthrough, less than a year ago." "That's unlikely." Pollux was a little surprised by her speculation. "But some people just can't make normal assumptions, right?" Castor laughed. "And she's constantly defying expectations and creating miracles, so I think it's very likely." Pollux thought of Yuli's past, the youngest SS-level Esper, then an SSS-level Esper, preventing the persecution of the Interstellar League, fending off attacks from over a dozen insect generals, protecting the natural star, and so on. "That being said, I've underestimated her." Pollux sighed. After all, she couldn't do some of the things that came after. Castor watched her, slammed onto the beach by the waves, his lips curled as he continued, "So, to get the ending I want as soon as possible, I want to give her a push." Pollux instantly guessed her thoughts upon hearing this. He swung his tail, his mouth wide open in surprise. "Are you planning to take her to your Wood Tribe's secret place? But she's not one of you, she's just a foreign guest." "Well, I know, but she's been helping me non-stop, from the very beginning of the Star Tournament to my recovery, and now, all the time, working for the United Legion. I'm willing to trust her. What she needs most now is time, and we are short of time, right?" Castor looked at her with gentle and firm eyes. "Okay." Pollux finally retreated in her eyes, and her tail kept swinging. After a while, Castor heard her voice. Since you are sure, I will help her too. Well, thank you, Palyulu. Hey! Don't call my name like that. The next day, after treating various injuries, Yuli met Castor and the others when she walked out the door. After she heard Castor's plan, she opened her eyes in surprise. Is this really possible? Let her go to the secret place of the Wood Clan, which is the most secret place in a country. Even the Wood Clan ministers under Castor are not qualified to enter. What's the difference between this and a stranger who has not met for a few times giving the secret code in his communicator? Castor laughed when he saw Yuli so surprised. Of course, the necessary contract is indispensable. That's good. Yuli breathed a sigh of relief. After that, the two signed a contract and agreed on a time to meet, and then separated. Yuli was still a little shocked when they walked away. In the evening, Yun Xiaozhu and the other two also learned the news and handed over various treasures they had prepared before to Yuli. Well, I didn't expect that the secret place of Xingyu Shuhai was actually related to time. Yun Xiaozhu sighed. Originally, we wanted to take you, Ali, to the Sunwheel Empire, but now Xingyu Shuhai is more suitable for you. Fei Yusen said, leaning on the sofa. Well, it's really suitable. After all, what we lack now is time. Xuanyan nodded slightly. But since it's a secret place, it's not convenient for us to go there. Fei Yusen said this, feeling a little sour. After all, he had missed Yuli's breakthrough before, and now he was going to miss it again. This was really... It's okay, I'll be back soon. Yuli touched Fei Yusen, who came to her side, and comforted her. Xuanya and Yun Xiaozhu looked at each other, and looked at Mo Yin on the other side, wondering what he was thinking. After that, when Yuli followed Castor through layer after layer of barriers, and finally came to this secret place, it was a sea of snow-white flowers, and those nameless flowers that looked like crystals bloomed. Whether it was the wind or the moonlight falling on this sea of flowers, it seemed very slow. Castor stood outside the flower sea and introduced Yuli. You just need to walk into the flower sea. The flowers in this flower sea condense the power of time. The time flow rate inside and outside is about 100:1. So don't worry, find your best state and try it. Yuli was very moved by the kind and gentle Castor in front of her. She couldn't help but hug her and said, Leave it to me. Yes. Castor watched Yuli walk towards the flower sea and finally disappeared in it. Mo Yin, who was forced to merge with other clones for a short time, followed her to the center of the flower sea and added what Castor had not finished saying just now. The flowers in this flower sea condense the power of time. Ali, you will also consume its power when you practice in it. These flowers will wither after consuming their power. So this is considered to be using less. Yuli opened her mouth and felt her intentions again. She closed her eyes, calmed herself, and began to draw out her various treasures that could enhance her power, absorbing them continuously. With her arrival, the flowers in the snow-white sea of flowers emitted faint, star-like points of light, eventually enveloping the entire sea. Chapter 139. As time ticked by, the progress bar behind Yuli's power level on her personal dashboard steadily increased, finally reaching 99%. Yuli slowly opened her eyes, and the treasures surrounding her lost their luster. Mo Yin watched the girl open her eyes, then slowly approached and said, Ali, are you ready? Yes, of course. Let's begin. Yuli smiled faintly and nodded. Mo Yin raised his soft tentacles, and a pitch-black mist spread, enveloping the girl and him like a giant cocoon. The mist gently and restrainedly enveloped the girl. The cold and desolate power of the rules carried Yuli to a starry sky, where she once again witnessed the scene Mo Yin had shown her. Beautiful flower buds, lush forests withered in an instant, and the once crystal-clear river dried up. The brilliant stars were swallowed by the endless black mist, destroyed, and reduced to a void of dust. Yuli followed Mo Yin's perspective as it ascended. The all-consuming black mist, carrying both death and tranquility, transformed into a mighty river. This endless river converged within the galaxy, like the very force of annihilation. Yuli felt a sense of suffocation simply standing in the void, sensing the power of these rules. Gazing at the black mist that enveloped the heavens and earth, she almost subconsciously closed her eyes. The next moment, the cold, soft mist gently touched her forehead, like a gentle kiss, soothing her inner tension. Ali, don't be afraid. Trust me. Yes. Yuli's long eyelashes fluttered as she opened her eyes. She tugged at a strand of her hair, a little sheepishly, and whispered in response. As if sensing her emotions, the dark mist gathered in her hands, and finally slowly dispersed like a petal spreading outwards, and the power of rules was used to perfection in his hands. A black Lycoris radiata bloomed in Yuli's hands, beautiful and magnificent. She looked at the flower in her hand, and couldn't take her eyes off for a while. Is Ollie ready? Mo-Yin asked again. Yuli took a deep breath and said, well, I'm ready. As she finished speaking, the black mist that was originally quiet in her spiritual sea continued to grow, and finally linked, entangled, and intersected with her. The two spirits were tightly entangled. Almost at the beginning of the entanglement of the spirit power, Yuli felt a very wonderful feeling wandering in her heart, extremely sweet and overly hot. This feeling seemed to jump out of her heart. It was as if she was completely immersed in sticky honey. The low and hoarse voices of men kept echoing in her ears. They kept calling her name, and the voices were extremely strong. Yuli was a little dazed. She thought of the spiritual connection that Mo-Yin had told her a long time ago, and that he could feel her thoughts and feelings. Then this feeling now was... She struggled slightly. Mo-Yin, is this your feeling? Well, Ollie, bear with it. His voice was a little excited and seemed to be enduring something, but Yuli, who was connected to his spirit, almost directly accepted his thoughts at this moment. Ollie, Ollie, Ollie. So cute, so cute, so cute, so cute, so cute, I really want to lick it. Will Ollie cry or hate it? I like it so much. Don't think about it anymore. Yuli blushed instantly, trying to stop those terrible thoughts from reverberating in her head. Sorry, but Ollie is adorable, lick. Well, get down to business. Yuli pushed away the black mist that was clinging to her body, finally licking her cheeks, wrists, and ankles, shouting in embarrassment. Okay. The black mist reluctantly retreated a distance before wrapping itself tightly around the girl again. Just as Yuli was about to say something else, she felt the mist drifting in the starry sky converge on her. Yuli felt as if she had merged with Mo-Yin in that instant. The mist flowed in her hands, flowing with her will. She gazed at the various shimmering planets in the void. Threads of incomparably mysterious yet majestic black mist descended, and the gem-like planets instantly lost their color, transforming into a quiet grayish white. The pitch-black fog continued to spread, engulfing the vibrant blossoms, the lush forests, and the endless streams. When it cleared, only a grayish-white desert remained. This bustling star region, teeming with life, seemed to have fallen silent. Not a sound, nothing, only emptiness. So quiet, truly so quiet. Yuli felt as if a black hole had appeared in her heart, draining all her emotions into utter silence and emptiness. She felt as if she were dying in that moment. Ali! The black fog that had been entwining her mental power dissipated instantly, the hollow feeling detached from her. Yuli raised her hand to press against her chest, tears streaming down her face as she breathed heavily. As if frightened by her tears, Mo-Yin's fog clung to her, gently brushing away her tears and patting her back. Sorry, Ollie. His voice was a little annoyed and nervous. I'm fine. Yuli recovered, hugged a ball of black mist in her arms and whispered, I think I know what I should do. The mist in her arms moved, as if she was a little confused. Yuli reached out and touched the mist that felt like cotton and said, Mo-Yin doesn't believe me? No. It's so quiet, I felt like I died at that moment. Yuli lowered her eyes and murmured. Although she didn't share how Mo-Yin created new rules, as she merged with his spirit, her understanding and control of this kind of annihilation rule power continued to deepen. At the same time, she already knew that she didn't want to create this kind of rule. What she wanted was warm sunshine, gorgeous flowers, green trees, blue ocean. It was the revival of all things and the rebirth after annihilation. She let go of the small ball of black fog in her arms and looked at his body. The endless black fog without any light, covering her and the entire star field, blinked. Mo-Yin is now like a bottomless abyss. It would be nice if you could meow. Meow. Mo-Yin said nothing, but did it obediently. A little cute. Yuli thought so and laughed, actively wrapping her mental power around the black fog left in her mental sea. Ali? Mo-Yin was a little confused by her actions, but thinking of her appearance just now, he obediently did not entangle it. Yuli raised her hand, and the familiar golden star appeared in her hand. This star emitting soft light was like a tiny, shaky, and about to go out flame. As her superpowers continued to be input, the star bloomed with dazzling light. Golden stars kept appearing in her hands, and finally she scattered these tiny stars on a dead planet. Those stars sank into the ground one after another, came to the place where the core of the earth was, slowly gathered together, and finally became a new core of the earth. Bang, bang, bang. Mo-Yin looked at this planet whose surface was still not moving, and was a little dazed. He seemed to hear the heartbeat of this planet again, and it seemed to come alive. As Yuli created more and more stars, these stars converged on this planet like a golden river. Finally, this dead planet began to gradually rejuvenate. It was no longer gray, but began to have oceans and forests, and animals and plants living in it. After she successfully awakened this planet, her special abilities began to continuously improve and transform. This was like an upgrade, from human to god. Her original body began to break, and the invisible and intangible power of rules reshaped her body. The rules she created formed her bones, muscles, and skin. Her long light brown curly hair was scattered, and her snow-white skin was like condensed fat, smooth and tender, and it was so soft that it could be broken by a blow. The original light brown eyes had turned into light gold, which looked as bright as stars and beautiful. Ding! Congratulations to the host for reaching an unprecedented realm. Your main task has been completed, and you will get the final achievement: becoming a god. All the clothes in the system will be unfolded for you, and you can use them freely. Well, thank you, system, or the rules of my original world, thank you. Yuli closed her eyes and felt that as she was promoted, the power of rules that had always protected her was gradually dissipating, like a gentle mother looking at her grown-up child, reluctant to let go, but finally letting go. No need to thank the host, goodbye. Well, I think I will go back, we will meet again. Yuli said in her heart. Well, I look forward to seeing you again next time, my dear host. As the mechanical sound dissipated, the power of rules completely disappeared. Well, we have an appointment. Yuli looked into the void and whispered. After she said goodbye, she looked at Imo Yin, who had been quietly guarding her, and smiled softly. After successfully upgrading, Yuli knew a lot of things she didn't know before, such as when she just came to this world, Imo Yin probably knew that she was from another world at that time. Imo Yin, aren't you going to explain it? Yuli tilted her head and said. Imo Yin, who felt her thoughts through the mental connection. When Ollie first came, she would probably leave if she told me. I don't want Ollie to leave me. His voice was a little low, and it sounded very pitiful. Yuli thought about the time when she was in this world just now. If Imo Yin had jumped out to expose her past, and told her that Yun Xiaoju and the others were his clones, she would have probably run away. Okay, I forgive you this time, Yuli muttered. When the black fog heard her words, it clung to her again, like a big golden retriever, but his words were very serious, which was not at all like his behavior. Ali, since we have broken through, let's leave. Wait a minute. Yuli interrupted, and at the same time came to his core, which was like a huge hollowed-out sphere, and the endless black fog in the sphere silently poured out from the core. This was something she couldn't discover before she broke through. She came to the core, and put a star emitting soft light into his core. Chapter 140. The star that was about to be swallowed by the black mist refused to be swallowed. Instead, it clung to his core, radiating light with unwavering warmth. It was as if he could hear the star's voice, a soft song. It was so strange. He was no longer so quiet, so eerily quiet. It was as if he had come alive in that moment. The thought that had occurred to him upon first meeting the girl was also realized in that moment. His star willingly fell into his arms, never to leave. His core began to tremble silently, as if unable to suppress the emotions within. It was strange. Before meeting the girl, he had never known he possessed such passionate and turbulent emotions. Yuli, however, put the star away and smiled at the black mist that enveloped her. This way, Imo Yin won't be so, well, lonely. But that's probably just my feeling. She spoke a little sheepishly, twirling a lock of her long chestnut hair. I think Imo Yin doesn't mind, right? Yuli looked at the black mist that was frozen around her, belatedly realizing that something was amiss. Ah! He looked at the girl reaching out to him, and let out a low, helpless sigh. Finally, the mist transformed into thick, powerful tentacles, wrapping her tightly around him, and holding her in his arms, preventing her from leaving. Yuli, Ollie, can I kiss you? The man's voice trembled and panted, as if he could no longer contain himself, yet he maintained a shaky, gentle tone as he asked her. The tip of a soft yet powerful tentacle gently rubbed Yuli's lips. Is this question even necessary? Yuli was entangled in his tentacles, unable to move. Hearing his eager yet cautious tone, and recalling the blushing kiss from before, she almost subconsciously grumbled. Finally, with a mixture of nervousness and anticipation, she closed her eyes and said, of course, we're already together. Like a starving dog finally receiving its owner's permission to eat, he kept calling her name, somewhat impatiently. The gushing emotions he couldn't control, and of course, he didn't want to. Finally, the mist-like tentacles tightly wrapped around the girl, starting with her wrists and ankles, gradually deepening. He also strengthened his spiritual connection with the girl, allowing Yuli to naturally accept his surging emotions. Yuli was overwhelmed by the sudden, overly passionate, and sticky emotion. This overly intense, twisted emotion completely contradicted the quiet, well-behaved little octopus she had always imagined. Although she now had the identity of Mo Yen, it could only be said that his previous image was too deeply rooted in people's minds. Even now, Yuli was still surprised. However, as the tentacles and mental energy continued to entangle and penetrate deeper, she quickly lost the energy to think about other things. She gradually sank into the intense feeling. Her gentle, star-like eyes gradually became hazy and unfocused. The tentacles rubbed her soft lips, turning them a striking red. The dark tentacles penetrated deep into them and entangled with them, and transparent liquid continuously flowed from the corners of her lips. The girl's originally cold and beautiful face, now radiant with a hint of red at the corners of her eyes, carried a charming, yet still unspoken air. Ollie. Mo Yen could sense her arousal through the mental connection, and the tentacles clinging to her skin, making his actions even more reckless. Finally, Yuli could no longer bear it. She wanted to say something, but the tentacles held her back. Pearl-like tears fell, only to be gently licked away by the tentacles that followed. However, his entanglement did not cease, but only intensified. By the time Yuli regained consciousness from the searing, burning emotions, she felt a long time had passed. Ahem. Well, what time is it now? Yuli opened her mouth and coughed. She touched her throat, feeling a slight discomfort, though she felt herself to be quite energetic. It wasn't long before Ollie collapsed 3 hours later, and only a day had passed. Mo Yen felt a little aggrieved when he spoke of this. After all, it felt like they had just begun, and the girl fainted, giving him a fright. Finally, he felt relieved to see that Yuli was merely unconscious, and nothing serious was wrong. Finally, he reluctantly communicated with his 3 clones. He guessed that the long mental connection was a bit too much for Ollie. Perhaps next time, just physically, she would last longer. As Mo Yen thought this, he saw the girl wake up, once again transforming into a little pink octopus and coming to Yuli's side, putting on her most adorable look. 3 hours is already a long time. Yuli stared at the adorable pink octopus before her, feeling deeply deceived. However, she sighed and didn't dwell on the matter. Instead, she calculated that it had taken her about a year since she arrived in this sea of time flowers. So, only 3 days had passed in the outside world, which wasn't so bad. Yuli expertly held Mo Yen in her arms and said, "Since I've broken through, let's go." "Okay," Mo Yen responded, and the galaxy gradually faded and vanished. Yuli returned to the snow-white sea of time flowers. She looked at the flowers around her, losing the laws of time and gradually withering, knowing it was her fault. Just as Yuli was about to meet Castor. In the Zerg's makeshift base, Freya, who was observing the various eggs in the hive, as usual, seemed to sense something. She stared into the distant void for a long time without moving. Instead, the jade moth, who had always been by her side, looked at her with concern. When Freya regained consciousness, she was met with a pair of worried eyes. She shook her head gently. "I'm fine, but..." "But what, Your Majesty?" The jade moth looked at her, and Freya's expression, unusually serious and surprised, was revealed. "I'm just curious. Is anyone in this era able to break free from their shackles? Perhaps this is also a kind of fate?" She murmured softly, her gaze piercing and far-reaching as she gazed toward the hive. Her gaze finally settled on the hatching insect eggs. The newly born insects cried out to their beloved insect king with pure cries. "Your Majesty." "Yes, I'm here." Freya looked at them with a dazed look in her eyes, but she became firm. At the same time, the Zergs attacking various planets became more crazy and desperate. Faced with the sudden increase in the attack strength of these overwhelming Zerg swarms, the already disadvantaged coalition army was even more exhausted to cope with it. At the same time, the Zerg generals also received Freya's order to change from the original acquisition of the crystal cores of those SSS-level mutants to speeding up the acquisition of the cores of these natural planets. This order also led to the further collapse of the star fields of these small and medium-sized forces, which originally had nothing left, and even some Zerg troops had already arrived in the star fields of the 7 major forces. Yuli also received news of the war from various places not long after she met up with Castor. After reading the news, Castor looked at Yuli seriously and said, "Congratulations on your breakthrough, but it seems that the Zerg has also received the news, otherwise the Zerg army would not have rioted like this." "Well, I want to go to the battlefield to see if it is possible to end this war as soon as possible." Yuli looked at Castor seriously. Castor nodded after hearing this, and at the same time stood up and bowed to Yuli carefully, and finally said, "Okay, I leave it all to you." "Well, I won't let Her Majesty the Queen down." Yuli laughed. Castor laughed after hearing what she said. "Then I look forward to your performance." Yuli quickly arrived at the most intense battlefield through the long-distance space teleportation array. The blazing light cannons were shining in the galaxy. Several SSS-level psychics were fighting with those insect generals. Even if these psychics wanted to protect these planets, the surging rule power seemed to tear this star field apart. The planets around them were inevitably damaged in various ways. The most serious ones were even directly exploded, and the best were turned into pieces of rubble. Yuli looked at the chaotic battle, and a wisp of invisible rhythm rose around her. Then, this new rule power became more and more powerful and vast, just like the surging tide gathering around her. After the momentum that Yuli had been restraining and suppressing was released, it began to rise rapidly, and the majestic and vast power with her as the center instantly spread to this star field. Boom! The two sides in the battle seemed to be stopped in time, and were pressed to move by this pressure. At the same time, the girl raised her hand slightly, and a golden crow burning with golden red flames appeared beside her, turning into a bright sun and blooming with dazzling light. At the same time, the gentle crescent moon on the other side also hung above the starry sky. In the next moment, the scorching sun burst into flames and rushed towards the insect generals. On the other side, the dreamy water moon cast white moonlight, healing the wounded with various injuries one by one. Those SSS-level psychics, who were all nudged at the same time, nodded to express their gratitude to Yuli. Yuli said, "You should quickly take the others to evacuate. They are not allowed to participate in the next step." "Okay, I know. Thank you for your rescue." "Thank you for your rescue." Those SSS-level psychics obeyed Yuli's words very well, and took other psychics away at a very fast speed. The faces of the insect generals facing the sea of fire that seemed to burn everything were not very good, but in the next moment, the spiritual power that protected them in their spiritual sea became active, and turned into an invisible barrier to protect them all. Finally, the vast spiritual power turned into a figure, and she gently waved to Yuli and the others. The terrifying spiritual power was like a huge mountain pressing on Yuli and the others. Yuli waved her hand, and the huge scorching sun rushed towards the spiritual power attack. Boom, boom, boom. Chapter 141. The attacks from both sides immediately triggered a massive explosion, like a massive, blazing star suddenly exploding within the star field. Invisible ripples spread outward like waves, affecting every planet and celestial debris in their path. Planets were relatively unscathed, but the fragments, large and small, were instantly reduced to dust. Even the SSS-level Esper, who had initially fled far away, were affected, though thankfully, thanks to Yuli's warning, they were not seriously harmed. Yuli was the only one to remain unscathed from the earth-shattering explosion. The blasts were automatically neutralized by the power of the laws within her body as they passed through her, creating a vacuum around her. Freya, on the other side, knew that only a portion of her mental power would harm Yuli, who had reached the same realm as her. Therefore, she channeled her remaining mental power into her own insect generals, and allowed them to depart. Freya's spiritual form began to fade. Finally, she looked at the girl before her and said, "I originally thought it was impossible for new gods to emerge in this newly awakened star region, so it posed no threat to me." Her gaze fell on Yuli with a complex expression. "Unfortunately, fate is always unpredictable. Come find me, and let's have a comprehension." The clear yet alluring voice faded as her figure gradually dissipated. Yuli, curious about what she had said, pulled Mo Yan out of hiding and asked, what did she mean by what she said earlier? Mo Yan's tentacles naturally curled around her fingertips. He pondered for a moment and said, "The insect emperor likely inherited the memories of the previous generation. So she possesses the memories of the previous insect emperor?" Yuli said, her hand resting on her chin. That's very likely. Did the previous insect emperor leave her some message? That's why you came to that conclusion?" Yuli tilted her head. Mo Yan's deep eyes fixed on the girl and said, "Ollie, do you remember our spiritual connection?" "Of course I do. How could I possibly forget something so deeply memorable? I was born during the most intense battle between the previous insect emperor and the gods or supreme leaders of the various races of that era." Yuli was stunned by Mo Yan's words, remembering the news from the previous meeting. According to clues provided by the Black Jade Empire and the Sunwheel Empire, thousands of years ago, this star region held records of various legends of gods. Later, this prosperous star region was invaded by a swarm of insects that obscured the sky. The gods and the insect king clashed, and eventually, the entire star region was plunged into a pitch-black darkness, with both gods and insect king perishing in the black tide that engulfed the star region. So the black tide, or black fog, that ended everything was you, Mo Yan? Yuli concluded. This also makes sense as to why the rule Mo Yan created was one of annihilation. Yes. Does this mean that this insect king, based on the memories of her previous generation, has concluded that it's essentially impossible for new gods to appear in our star region so soon? Yuli blinked. Mo Yin murmured softly, his gaze resting on Yuli, a gentle and affectionate one. So Ollie was an accident. Well, after all, if you really think about it, I'm definitely not from this world. Mo Yin approached the girl, the black mist enveloping her like silky ribbons. His voice was as deep and rich as a cello. But I'm so glad I encountered this accident at that time. I'm so happy to have met Ollie, my star. I always be with you, Ollie. His voice, along with his words, was filled with emotion like surging waves, ready to engulf her whole being. Although they didn't have a mental connection yet, she could clearly feel his frank, naked sincerity as he lay before her. Yuli's cheeks flushed almost instantly. She hesitated for a long time before finally, resigned to herself, burying herself completely in the black mist's arms. He chuckled softly, and the black mist gently embraced her. Don't laugh. Ah! Yuli screamed inwardly for a long time before finally recovering, like a rabbit emerging from its nest. She tugged at a wisp of black mist. As if sensing something, his gaze fell on her. The wisp of black mist transformed into a small pink octopus in her hand. Yuli pinched the octopus in her hand and whispered, "Me too. I'm also glad to have met you back then." Yes, I know. When Yuli returned to the Xingyi Tree territory, the SSS-level Esper had already returned to the planet where the United Legion was located and reported their situation. Castor also learned of Yuli's situation through the United Legion. She expressed relief that Yuli had safely returned to the Xingyi Tree territory, and also learned from Yuli the Insect King's next plan. Castor frowned delicately and looked at Yuli. So you're going to find the Insect King now? Yes, Your Majesty. Yuli nodded slightly. After all, everything about the Zerg depends on the Insect King. If we defeat her, our current predicament will be resolved. That's right, but... She looked at Yuli with a piercing gaze, and finally offered a gentle smile. Yuli, you should rest for a while. I think this matter needs to be discussed with the United Legion. Okay. Yuli nodded. As Yuli passed the night peacefully, a meeting on the StarNet initiated by Castor was underway. By the time Yuli learned the outcome, it had already concluded. Yuli looked at the exquisite tray containing 7 envelopes of rare interstellar paper. Each envelope bore a wax seal of various colors. Each seal was unique, yet Yuli was familiar with them. It was fair to say that anyone living in this star region was familiar with them. These were the seals representing the 7 superpowers. Yuli opened them and examined them, then fell into a long silence. She seemed to have become rich once again, and in every way, exponentially. It made her a little dazed. What did it mean to be gifted with dozens or hundreds of natural planets and mineral planets, and to be granted titles like Grand Duke and Earl, along with a trove of SSS-level treasures? What on earth was this all about? Yuli's gaze fell on the Wood Tribe Queen, Castor, who maintained her proper and elegant demeanor. Perhaps her gaze was too intense, for she looked up from her duties and smiled gently at Yuli. These are necessary remunerations. After all, Your Excellency Yuli is acting for us, isn't it? So please accept these remunerations. Although we are in a state of war, and banquets and the like are difficult to hold, your various properties, planets, and titles will be officially announced. At this point, she recalled yesterday's recollection. Obsidian, Sun Wheel, and Myriad Beasts Hall had offered exceptionally generous terms, even significantly more than the other 3 major factions. Xingyu Shuhai, thanks to Yuli's previous assistance, offered comparable terms. Thinking of the 3 exceptionally distinguished individuals she had encountered in her recollection last night, a smile brightened her eyes, and she continued, "Of course, Yuli, after everything is over, if you have time, you can go to Obsidian, Sun Wheel, and the Temple of 10,000 Beasts. I think there will be some very interesting things to see." Yuli was speechless at Castor's excited gaze. So, were Yun Xiaozhu and the other 3 the ones who attended yesterday's meeting? Remembering how the 3 of them had dissolved their fusion with Mo Yin just after she had achieved her breakthrough and left the secret place, she was startled by the sudden appearance of 3 living beings. She hadn't even realized they had merged with Mo Yin before. Later, she learned from them that they had reluctantly merged because they didn't want to miss such a memorable moment of her breakthrough. Of course, Mo Yin shared the same attitude. Thinking of what had happened before, she held her forehead, looked up at Castor, and smiled helplessly. "Your Majesty, please don't make fun of me." Okay, I understand." Castor chuckled and nodded. After Yuli put away the envelopes, Castor bowed again and said, "May Your Excellency have a safe journey." "Of course, wait for my good news." Yuli smiled brilliantly. On an unknown planet, a group of insect generals half knelt before Freya. White Ghost Cicada, looking very unhappy, said, "Your Majesty, do you really not need us?" His tone was filled with loss and self-blame. Freya looked at the insect generals and said, "This isn't something you can handle." Hearing this, the already frustrated insect generals became even more dejected. Seeing their expressions, Freya could only offer dry comfort. After watching the insect generals leave, she looked at the jade moth, who had remained by her side, and her long eyelashes drooped. After a long moment, she whispered, "Ayu, take those insect eggs and leave." "Your Majesty?" The jade moth looked up at the breathtakingly beautiful girl before him with some disbelief. Freya smiled softly, almost dreamily. She looked at the jade moth as if she were looking through him at the previous empress, countless years ago. Back then, the previous empress had given the same order, leading to her birth. She reached out and lifted his chin, then lowered her head and gently kissed him on the cheek. "This is an order, Jade Moth. Survive with the eggs." "Yes, I will obey your order." The Jade Moth raised his head, his gaze fixed on her face, as delicate as a lotus emerging from the water, as if he were memorizing her completely. Finally, he lowered his head and responded, stepping towards the insect nest. Amidst the empty starry sky, Freya smoothed her hair. Her wings, as brilliant as golden, spread out. Her spiritual power merged with the power of the rules she had created, transforming into a pure golden ocean. She looked up at the girl falling from the starry sky and said, "You've finally arrived. I've been waiting for you for so long." Chapter 142. Yuli looked at the Zerg King in the golden ocean. There were no other Zerg generals around her, only her. She looked at Yuli with a serious face and observed him carefully, then smiled brilliantly and said, "So that's it. You are not from this star field." No wonder. Yuli was not surprised that Freya could see through her origins. She said lightly, "Even if I am not from this star field, so what?" "Yes." Freya understood the hidden meaning in her words. She naturally knew the reputation of the Zerg among all the races. After all, no one wanted to live with a race that feeds on others. "Since we can't talk, let's fight," Freya said softly. The Golden Rule domain with a radius of tens of thousands of meters spread out around her, and the Golden Rule forces, like raindrops, gathered together. Each of these water drops contained endless and majestic power. They looked as small as sand, but they contained the universe. Those water droplets gathered into waves that covered the sky and rushed towards Yuli like a roaring dragon. And the attacks condensed by these mental powers were more terrifying than ordinary supernatural attacks. It even caused space distortion wherever it passed. Yuli looked at the huge waves that were about to swallow her up, raised her hand, and golden stars shone in her hand. Her long lavender hair spread like a waterfall, and her dark eyes were bright and clear, like the stars twinkling in the quiet night sky. The long skirt on her body was based on the azure night sky, dotted with light golden stars, as gorgeous as a bright galaxy, like a gorgeous galaxy painting, gorgeous and dazzling, like a dream. A dazzling, shimmering seven-pointed star adorned her waist. Golden pendants resembling galaxy tracks adorned her arms and ankles, swirling subtly with her movements, lending the young woman a touch of mystery. With Yuli's movements, the grayish-white sky suddenly brightened, stars lighting up one after another, eventually converging into a vast galaxy. This galaxy expanded visibly, expanding dozens of times in the blink of an eye, resembling a vast sea of stars. Countless stars within this vast sea of stars simultaneously burst forth, with dazzling brilliance, directly confronting Freya's golden sea of spiritual power. One gold, one purple, they collided, entwining and devouring each other, both carrying a terrifying force of heaven and earth. Splash! 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 Countless water droplets collided with the stars, emanating invisible waves that instantly crushed everything around them. Fortunately, the location they had chosen was a void, so no one else was harmed. However, the impact did shock someone who had been observing their battle from a distance. Fortunately, this observer was an SSS-level psychic, otherwise the aftermath of the battle might have shattered their crystal core by now. The psychic immediately distanced himself once more, looking towards the place where the two women were fighting. It was like two dazzling stars colliding and devouring each other. Even the surrounding space began to distort under their influence. Such a battle was truly terrifying. No wonder the ruins recorded it in such detail. The psychic watched for only a moment before his eyes began to ache. He quickly closed them, and distanced himself once more, sighing. He touched the artifact he carried. It was a magical artifact capable of forcibly creating a massive black hole, a national treasure among the 7 major factions. Its availability was extremely limited, and its use would devour the user. This was the backup plan discussed during the meeting. If Lord Yuli failed, he would activate this artifact and perish alongside the Zerg Emperor. But it seems Lord Yuli has the upper hand. As he watched, the Allied forces launched a general assault on the Zerg stronghold. The purple mist surrounding the planet, now a Zerg stronghold, was forcibly shattered by the five-colored divine light. Phantom Cricket looked up and saw a young man in elegant attire, short dark blue hair, standing in the void. His expression was sullen. Fei Yusin met his murderous gaze with unconcern, her lip curling. After all, Ali is on the front lines, so I can't afford to give it my all. Otherwise, if she knew, she'd probably be upset. As if a thought had occurred to him, his emerald eyes curved, and a brilliant, five-colored divine light shone behind him, illuminating the entire world. He grasped the knife-sharp folding fan, twisting it on his wrist. In an instant, the man lunged at the Phantom Cricket like a cheetah. At the same moment, Yuan Xiaozhu, clad in a resplendent white robe, 12 pairs of platinum wings spread out. The book of golden runes slowly unfolded in his hand, and golden runes emerged from the book, transforming into lifelike animals that pounced upon the Zerg that had just emerged from their nests. In an instant, the ferocious Zerg were purified by the runes, transforming into a pool of blood. By the time the white ghost cicada arrived, the blood had already dyed the entire land red, and the protected insect nest had been completely consumed by the raging fire. Yuan Xiaozhu lowered his gaze to meet his snow-white, pupilless eyes, and smiled gently. Unclean creature, let me grant you purification. In the other side of the void, various SSS-level psychics fought back and forth against the insect generals. Only the white ghost cicada, as if sensing an opening, retreated. The most prominent figure in this battle was the black dragon, its body like a floating island. Every time the pure black dragon spread its knight-like wings and slashed forward with its incredibly sharp claws, it could. A single blow severely wounded an insect commander. Bright red blood poured down like rain. As their battle raged, Yuli's side was also engaged, even more fiercely. After all, apart from the two of them, nothing could survive under this vast ocean of rule power. But as time passed, Freya seemed to sense something, her previously calm emotions becoming agitated, and her attacks intensified. Yuli naturally knew that the combined attack on their side was working, and she certainly wasn't defeated. Mo Yin. She called out his name in her heart. Mo Yin, who had been by her side, contacted the small octopus form, transforming into his original form. The dark mist gently surrounded her. As Mo Yin contacted the small octopus form, Freya looked at the black mist beside Yuli, her pupils constricting for a moment. It's you? In her memory, the last thing that devoured the previous generation was not the gods of various tribes that had been entangled with her for a long time, but the terrifying, insubstantial, endless black fog. But she didn't have much time to marvel. The black mist magically merged with Yuli's power of rules, and life and death merged and rotated, like two intertwined semicircles, a cycle of birth and death, endless and endless. Yuli's original sea of stars transformed into a deeper, more mysterious, and boundless form. It stretched across the endless void, like an eternal and unchanging law. Every shift in the sea of stars carried a profound rhythm. It mightily blocked the surging golden waves, swallowing them up, and finally becoming part of the sea of stars. Yuli felt as if her power of rules had undergone some miraculous transformation after merging with Mo Yin's, becoming even more ethereal and vast, as if merging with the laws of heaven and earth. Freya finally gazed at the sea of stars that threatened to swallow her whole, then at the black mist beside Yuli, her long eyelashes fluttering shut. Is this fate? She finally opened her eyes, and smiled brightly. Mo Yin seemed to sense a pitch-black mist about to envelop Yuli. The next moment, a terrifying explosion erupted where Freya was. Boom, 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 boom. Like an exploding, blazing star, the dazzling golden light engulfed the entire void. Yuli also reacted instantly. The vast sea of stars enveloped the terrifying explosion. As the dazzling golden explosion gradually faded, Yuli breathed a sigh of relief, still a little dazed for a moment. Is this really the end? Yes, it's over. The black mist stroked Yuli's soft hair. At the same moment, the Zerg generals engaged in a fierce battle with the Allied forces, as if sensing something, self-destructed one after another. Fortunately, with the help of Yuan Xiaozhu and the other three, they were able to escape the planet without serious harm. The other psychics suffered no serious injuries. However, this unknown planet disintegrated under the Zerg's self-destruction. On that day, the Zerg Emperor and dozens of his generals were slain, and the Allied forces achieved an unprecedented victory. Finally, the various factions decided to hold an unprecedented feast in the Xingyu Tree territory. The magnificent banquet hall was a shimmering scene of light and shadow. People came and went in suits and ties, chatting with relaxed smiles. Upstairs in the banquet hall, Yuli wore a smoky purple fishtail dress, the exquisite tailoring perfectly showcasing her curves. The outer layer of light and soft tulle was embellished with tiny diamonds, which complemented the necklace around her neck, adding a hazy feeling. She was holding a glass of fruit tea that looked like red wine, gazing down at the bustling scene below when she heard a soft voice from behind her. "Why don't you go down and take a look? Everyone's so curious about you, Yuli." It was Castor, also wearing a gorgeous white dress that day, which accentuated her elegance and grace. "No, I think I'd be surrounded if I go down." Yuli recalled her previous meetings at Starnet. Everyone was already so enthusiastic back then. She couldn't imagine how crazy it would be now. Indeed. Castor, thinking of the enthusiastic praise for Yuli on Starnet these days, nodded in agreement at her enormous fan base. "What about you? Why don't you go down?" Yuli turned to look at Castor and asked. "It's a banquet that's not easy to come to. I guess they will be nervous if I go." "It's fine." Castor took a sip of red wine on the table and was a little confused. "Is this wine?" "No, it's fruit tea." Yuli raised the wine glass in her hand. "Okay." Castor smiled helplessly. She looked at the relaxed look of the girl and said, "Are you going to return to the Federation later?" Yuli thought for a while and shook her head. "I should stay and participate in the recovery work later." "Is that so? I have to trouble you later. After all, Xingyu Tree was severely damaged. But after I'm done, I want to go to other places to have a look." Yuli smiled brightly, as if she thought of something. "Then I hope you have a pleasant journey later." Castor looked at the smiling girl and said, "Yeah." Then the two chatted for a while, and Castor left for something. Yuli also came to a garden where there were not many people. Imoyen, who had been silent, looked at the girl and said, "Ollie, where do you want to go next?" "This." Yuli rolled up a strand of long hair, a little embarrassed. "Well, the 10,000 Beasts Palace, the Obsidian Empire, and the Sunwheel Empire." Yuli felt a little guilty about the dark eyes of the little octopus, and quickly added, "Of course, I will always take Imoyen with me." Just then, footsteps were heard at the end of the garden. Yuli looked up and saw that it was indeed Yun Xiaozhu and the other three. "If you really want to come to the 10,000 Beasts Palace, you can tell me directly, Ollie." Fei Yusen smiled, her sapphire earrings gleaming in the light. "I'm so happy that Ollie is coming to the Sun Empire," Yun Xiaozhu said, his gentle eyes fixed on the girl. "I can take you to Obsidian right now. Ollie, there's no need to worry about the future." Xianye's blood-red pupils glared at the girl, brimming with passion. "Hey!" Fei Yusen glared at Xianye, who was about to get close to Yuli. Yuli, watching the three men about to fight, said helplessly, "I'm not thinking about it now, I'm thinking about it later." "Then Ollie, please don't abandon me, us like this again," Fei Yusen said, approaching Yuli, clearly displeased with the previous plan. Though Yun Xiaozhu and Xianye remained silent, their actions clearly showed their displeasure. One wrapped his dragon tail around her wrist, while the other held her hand tightly. "No, I won't abandon you anymore." Yuli looked at them earnestly, remembering her earlier thought of returning home. The young girl's gaze swept around, finally landing on Imoyen. Seeing that she seemed to have something important to say, Yun Xiaozhu and the other two chose to merge with Imoyen. "Imoyen, eh?" "Not very willingly." "Imoyen, are you willing to go home with me?" Yuli asked, picking up the pink octopus. "Of course, Ollie, I won't leave you anywhere in the future." His voice was filled with infinite tenderness and doting, and his soft tentacles wrapped around her fingers, as if making a promise. "Well, then it's a deal." Yuli smiled, holding him tightly in her arms.